During his wife's labor, he made a cruel gesture. He slipped a ring onto his pregnant mistress's finger, but the moment the nurse approached holding an envelope, everything changed. The showroom of Elite Motors gleamed under strategic lighting, each luxury vehicle positioned on the polished marble floor to inspire maximum desire. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows, highlighting the chrome detailing on a midnight blue Maserati. "She's absolutely stunning, isn't she?" Wyatt Holloway's voice was like warm bourbon, smooth with just the right amount of burn. 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Italian leather interior that feels like you're sitting inside a cloud. He ran his hand along the car's sleek hood, the gesture almost sensual. The middle-aged couple exchanged glances. The woman's resistance was crumbling visibly. Her husband still maintained a skeptical expression. "It's significantly above our budget," the man said, adjusting his glasses. "We came in looking at the BMW series." Wyatt smiled, the kind of smile that created an immediate bond of complicity. His blue eyes, described by more than one female client as trustworthy, locked with the husband's. "Richard," he said, remembering the name from their introduction 40 minutes earlier, "may I speak candidly?" Without waiting for permission, he continued, "There are cars you drive, and there are cars you experience. This," he gestured to the Maserati, "is your wife telling the world she's arrived." He turned to the woman. "Elizabeth deserves this, don't you think?" 2 hours later, Wyatt watched the couple drive off in their new purchase, having signed for a financing package that would keep them paying Elite Motors for the next 7 years. He felt the familiar rush of satisfaction, not just from the commission, but from the pure art of the sell. "Another lamb to the slaughter," drawled Marcus, one of the junior salesmen who'd been watching the masterclass from a discreet distance. Wyatt's smile didn't waver. "They got what they wanted. We got what we wanted. Everyone wins. Except their bank account. If you feel that way about our clients, maybe luxury sales isn't for you." Wyatt's tone remained light, but the rebuke was clear. As sales manager, he maintained certain standards. Ethical flexibility regarding financing being completely acceptable, overt cynicism about customers being bad form. In the glass-walled office at the back of the showroom, Jacob Reinhardt, the dealership owner, gestured for Wyatt to join him. The old man's face was flushed with pleasure. 3 Maseratis this month alone. I'd ask what your secret is, but I've seen you work." Jacob clapped him on the shoulder. "Whatever it is, bottle it and pass it around to the rest of these underperformers. Just doing my job, sir. Your job is making me rich, and you do it exceptionally well." Jacob pulled out a crystal decanter of scotch from his desk drawer. "Let's celebrate." As they clinked glasses, Wyatt's phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at it discreetly. A message from Celine. "Miss you. My place tonight?" He typed back quickly. "Can't tonight. Vivian has a doctor's appointment. Tomorrow lunch?" "Everything okay?" Jacob asked, noticing the distraction. "Just my wife," Wyatt replied smoothly. "Baby stuff." Jacob's face softened. "How is Vivian doing? When's she due again?" "About 3 weeks. Doctor's keeping a close eye because of her history." "Well, you make sure you take care of her. Nothing more important than family." Wyatt nodded, the perfect picture of a devoted husband. "Absolutely." The Holloway home sat in a quiet Austin suburb, a 2-story modern farmhouse with a wraparound porch and enough yard for the swing set Wyatt had already mentally placed. Inside, Vivian Holloway carefully arranged a plate of colorful vegetables beside a homemade dip. "Honey, I'm home," Wyatt called out, the playful 1950s reference their long-standing joke. Vivian looked up, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, cheeks flushed from the kitchen heat. At 8 months pregnant, she moved with deliberate care, one hand often resting protectively on her swollen belly. "Just in time," she said. "Your daughter has been practicing her kickboxing routine all afternoon." Wyatt set down his briefcase and crossed the room to kiss her, resting his hand on her stomach. Right on cue, a solid kick pressed against his palm. "That's my girl," he murmured. "Strong like her mom." Vivian's eyes, warm, intelligent, trusting, met his. "How was work?" "Sold the blue Maserati." "The one you said was overpriced even at dealer cost?" Wyatt grinned. "That's the one." "You're terrible." But she smiled, long accustomed to his sales tactics. As a literature professor specializing in ethics in modern fiction, Vivian sometimes teased him about his moral flexibility in pursuit of a commission. While Wyatt changed out of his suit, Vivian set the table for dinner. Her movements were slower these days, the high-risk nature of her pregnancy demanding constant caution. After 2 devastating miscarriages, every day closer to term felt like a victory. "Dr. Peterson confirmed our appointment for tomorrow," she called out. "She wants another ultrasound just to be safe." Wyatt emerged from the bedroom in jeans and a t-shirt. "I'll be there. 3 o'clock, right?" 2:30. She gave him a look. "I wrote it on your calendar." 2:30, he repeated, mentally rearranging his lunch plans with Selene. "I won't be late." Dinner was comfortable, their conversation flowing easily after 7 years of marriage. Vivian talked about the novel her freshman class was discussing, while Wyatt shared sanitized dealership gossip. What he didn't mention was the text that vibrated in his pocket halfway through the meal, or how he checked it during a bathroom break. "Lunch is too short. I need more of you than that. S." After dinner, while Vivian graded papers in the living room, Wyatt stepped onto the back porch with the excuse of checking the weather. He dialed Celine's number. "So you're being demanding," he said quietly when she answered. "I haven't seen you in 4 days." Selena's voice had a husky quality that still sent shivers down his spine after 8 months of their affair. "I'm going through withdrawal. You know the situation. Your pregnant wife?" "Yes, I'm well aware of the situation." There was a bite to her words. "How much longer are we going to do this, Wyatt?" He glanced through the window at Vivian, her reading glasses perched on her nose, one hand absently rubbing her belly as she focused on a student's paper. "This isn't a conversation for now," he whispered. "Then when?" "After the baby comes, when you'll be even more entangled. You promised this was temporary." "It is. Just be patient." "Patient," she laughed, the sound both bitter and seductive. "That's what I've been for 8 months while you go home to her every night." "Selene, I get it. You love her, but we both know you love me too." Did he? Sometimes in Celine's bed, with her emerald eyes looking up at him and her lithe body wrapped around his, he convinced himself it was love. Other times, usually in the sobering light of morning, he recognized it as addiction to the danger, the novelty, the ego-stroking attention of a beautiful younger woman. "I need to go," he said finally. "Fine, but we need to talk, really talk. Tomorrow, lunch." After hanging up, Wyatt stood in the darkness for a moment, listening to the distant sound of traffic and the closer chorus of cicadas. He'd never planned to become a cheater. It had happened gradually, first harmless flirtation with the new marketing manager, then drinks after a successful sales event, then a kiss in her car that led to more, always more. Back inside, he settled next to Vivian on the couch, guilt and desire engaged in their usual war within him. "The nursery furniture gets delivered on Saturday," she said, setting aside her grading. "I thought we could paint this weekend." "Absolutely," he agreed, not mentioning the golf game he'd arranged with Celine's brother, an alibi for a planned afternoon with her. Vivian reached for his hand. "I still can't believe we're finally going to be parents." Her voice trembled slightly. "After everything, it feels like a miracle." Wyatt squeezed her hand, remembering the devastation of their losses. The first miscarriage at 10 weeks, the second at 14, each one breaking something in Vivian that took months to repair. This pregnancy had been fraught with anxiety from the beginning, every twinge causing panic, every doctor's appointment approached with dread. "Our little miracle," he echoed, the words sticking in his throat. "I've been thinking about names," Vivian continued, her face softening with hope. "What do you think about Audrey, after my grandmother?" "Audrey Holloway," he tested the name. "It's beautiful." Vivian's smile was radiant. "I had this moment today, picturing us bringing her home, watching her grow up. You teaching her to ride a bike, me reading her stories. Our family." The image pierced Wyatt with unexpected force. Despite his betrayal, he did want this life. The respectable family man with a successful career, beautiful wife and adorable child. It was the life he'd always envisioned for himself. Yet there was Selene, with her wild energy and insatiable ambition that matched his own. She challenged him, understood his darker impulses in ways Vivian never could. "You know what the doctor said today?" Vivian's voice pulled him back from his thoughts. "She said Audrey is perfectly positioned for delivery. Everything looks good for a natural birth as long as my blood pressure stays stable." "That's great news." Wyatt felt genuine relief. The high-risk designation had been a cloud hanging over them for months. "I want you there for all of it," she said, suddenly earnest. "Even the messy parts. I need you, Wyatt. "I'll be right beside you," he promised, meaning it, even as he wondered how he would manage the increasingly complicated logistics of his double life once the baby arrived. Later that night, with Vivian asleep beside him, Wyatt stared at the ceiling, imagining parallel futures branching out before him. In one, he was the devoted father and husband, his affair with Celine a regrettable mistake eventually forgotten. In another, he left Vivian after the baby was born, building a new life with Celine despite the judgment and chaos that would follow. Neither future felt completely right or wrong. Both required sacrifices he wasn't sure he was willing to make. 3 days later, Wyatt was reviewing the monthly sales numbers in his office when Celine appeared in his doorway. The marketing manager looked particularly striking in a deep green dress that matched her eyes, her blonde hair falling in waves around her shoulders. "I need you to sign off on these promotional materials," she said, her professional tone at odds with the heated look she gave him when she closed his door. Wyatt took the folder, keenly aware of her perfume as she leaned over his desk. "You look amazing today. I had an important client meeting this morning," she lowered her voice, "and I wanted to look good for our lunch." He winced. "About that, I need to reschedule. Vivian's appointment got moved up." Celine's expression hardened. "Again?" "It's the baby, Celine. I can't miss these appointments." "Of course not. You're the perfect husband." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Except for the part where you're sleeping with me." "Keep your voice down," he hissed, glancing at the glass walls of his office. The showroom beyond was busy with midday customers. Celine sat in the chair across from him, her posture rigid. "We need to talk." "Not here." "Then where? When? You keep putting me off." Wyatt ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. "What do you want from me?" "I want to know where this is going." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her vulnerability. "I didn't sign up to be your permanent mistress, Wyatt." Before he could respond, his phone rang, Vivian's ringtone. He held up a finger to Celine and answered. "Hey, what's up?" Vivian's voice was tight with anxiety. "I think something's wrong. I've been having these pains. They're not like normal Braxton Hicks." Wyatt's heart jumped. "Are you bleeding?" It was the terrifying prelude to their previous losses. "No, but the pain is really bad and there's a lot of pressure. Dr. Peterson said to come in right away." "I'm on my way home, don't drive yourself." "I already called an Uber. Can you meet me at St. David's?" "I'm leaving now." Wyatt was already standing, grabbing his jacket. "I love you." "Love you too, please hurry." He ended the call to find Celine watching him, her expression unreadable. "The baby?" "Vivian's having complications. I have to go." Celine nodded, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "Of course." As Wyatt rushed past her, she caught his arm. "Call me later. Let me know what happens." The genuine concern in her voice stopped him short. This was the Celine he'd fallen for, passionate but also capable of real empathy. The contradictions within her mirrored his own. "I will," he promised. The drive to St. David's Medical Center was a blur of anxiety and dread. Wyatt kept picturing Vivian alone and frightened, perhaps losing their miracle baby, while he'd been entertaining thoughts of leaving her. Shame washed over him in waves. He found her in the obstetrics triage area, already connected to monitors. The rapid thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, strong and regular, to his immense relief. "What did they say?" he asked, taking her hand. Vivian's face was pale but composed. "They think it's early labor. I'm having contractions. But it's too soon. Almost 3 weeks before her due date. Dr. Peterson says babies make their own schedules. They're going to try to stop it if they can." A nurse entered, petite and efficient-looking with a name tag that read, "Thea McKinnon, RN." "Mr. Holloway? I'm Thea, one of the labor and delivery nurses who will be taking care of your wife." She checked Vivian's monitors. "How are we feeling now? Still having pain?" "It comes and goes," Vivian answered. "Is the baby okay?" "Her heart rate looks perfect," Thea assured her. "Dr. Peterson is ordering some medication to try to stop these contractions, but I should warn you that once labor starts, sometimes there's no stopping it." She smiled kindly. "But 37 weeks is considered full term, so even if this little one comes today, she should be just fine." As Thea adjusted Vivian's IV, Wyatt's phone vibrated. He stepped into the hallway to check it. "We need to talk ASAP. It's urgent." As he frowned and typed back, "At hospital with V having contractions. Will call when I can." The response came immediately. "This can't wait. I'm pregnant." Wyatt stared at the screen, the world seeming to tilt beneath his feet. Through the doorway, he could see Vivian's anxious face as she watched the contraction monitor. Inside her, their daughter, the child they'd prayed for after years of heartbreak. And now Celine was pregnant too. In the sterile hospital hallway, under fluorescent lights that suddenly seemed too harsh, Wyatt Holloway realized his carefully compartmentalized life was about to implode, taking everyone he cared about down with it. Wyatt stood frozen in the hospital corridor, the phone heavy in his hand. The bustling medical staff moved around him like water flowing past a stone, their practiced efficiency a stark contrast to his internal chaos. "I'm pregnant." Two words that shattered whatever illusions he'd maintained about containing the damage of his affair. He thought of the small velvet box tucked in his jacket pocket, a diamond ring he'd purchased 3 days ago after another of Celine's ultimatums. It was meant to be a promise, a placeholder to buy time while he figured out what he truly wanted. Now time had run out. "Mr. Holloway?" Nurse Thea appeared in the doorway. "Your wife is asking for you." Wyatt slipped the phone into his pocket. "Sorry, work emergency." Something in Thea's expression suggested she didn't quite believe him, but her professional demeanor remained intact. "Dr. Peterson is ordering medication to stop the contractions, but she'd like to discuss the possibility of delivery if that doesn't work." He nodded, following her back into the room where Vivian lay connected to monitoring equipment. The steady heartbeat of their daughter filled the space, a rhythmic reminder of his responsibilities. "Everything okay?" Vivian asked, noticing his expression. "Fine, just checking in with the office." The lie came easily, one of dozens he'd told over the past 8 months. What did the doctor say? As Vivian explained the situation, Wyatt felt his phone vibrate again and again. Celine wouldn't be ignored, not with this news. "I need to make a call," he said when there was a break in conversation. "I should let your parents know what's happening." In the hallway, he found a quiet corner near a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. Celine answered on the first ring. "Finally," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Are you sure?" It was all he could manage. 3 positive tests. I'm 6 weeks along according to the app. 6 weeks. He calculated quickly, that night after the dealership's quarterly celebration, when they'd been careless in the heat of the moment. "We need to talk in person," he said, lowering his voice as a doctor walked past. "But I can't leave right now. Vivian might be having the baby." "I understand that." Celine's tone suggested she did, but barely. "But this can't wait, Wyatt. I need to know where you stand." He closed his eyes, the weight of dual paternity pressing down on him. "There's a coffee shop across from the hospital, Indigo Coffee. Can you meet me there in an hour? I'll tell Vivian I need to get some things from home." After ending the call, Wyatt leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of his racing heart. 2 women, 2 babies, one spectacular mess of his own making. When he returned to Vivian's room, Thea was checking the contraction monitor. "Good news," she said. "The medication seems to be working. The contractions are slowing down." Relief washed over Vivian's face. "So we're not having a baby today?" "It's looking less likely, but we'll need to monitor you for at least 24 hours, Thea explained. "If the contractions stop completely, Dr. Peterson might consider sending you home on bed rest until your due date." "I should go get your hospital bag," Wyatt said, seeing his opportunity. "And some books to keep you entertained." Vivian smiled gratefully. "And my body pillow. The hospital beds are so uncomfortable." "Of course." He kissed her forehead. "I'll be back before you know it." As he left, Thea gave him a curious look. Something about her perceptive brown eyes made Wyatt feel exposed, as if she could see through his convenient errand to the truth beneath. Indigo Coffee Shop sat directly across from St. David's Medical Center, catering primarily to hospital staff and visitors seeking stronger coffee than the cafeteria provided. At 4:30 in the afternoon, it was relatively quiet, with just a few medical professionals in scrubs scattered among the tables. Wyatt chose a corner booth with a view of the entrance, anxiously checking his watch every few minutes. He'd stopped at his car first, retrieving the velvet box from the glove compartment where he'd hidden it, away from both Vivian's and Celine's potential discovery. The bell above the door chimed, and Celine entered. Even in her distressed state, she commanded attention, tall and striking in her professional attire, her blonde hair now pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She spotted him immediately, weaving between tables with determined strides. "You look terrible," she said, as she slid into the seat across from him. "It's been a day." He pushed a cup toward her. "I ordered you herbal tea. Caffeine is bad for—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "The baby," Celine supplied, her green eyes challenging him. "You can say it, Wyatt. I'm pregnant with your child." Hearing it stated so boldly made it impossible to deny. His child. A sibling to the daughter currently refusing to stay put in her mother's womb on the other side of the street. "How did this happen?" he asked, immediately regretting the cliched question. "The usual way," Celine replied, with a hint of her typical sardonic humor. "The question isn't how, Wyatt. It's what now." What now, indeed. Wyatt had spent months balancing on the knife edge between two lives, telling himself that eventually he'd make a choice. He'd imagined scenarios where he left Vivian after the baby was born, and others where he ended things with Celine and recommitted to his marriage. But he'd never factored in a second pregnancy. "I need time to process this," he began. "We don't have time," Celine interrupted, leaning forward. "Your wife is about to have your baby. I'm carrying your child. The clock has run out on processing." She was right, of course. Celine was always clear-eyed about reality in ways that sometimes unsettled him. "I've made a decision," she continued when he didn't immediately respond. "I'm keeping this baby, with or without you." "I wouldn't ask you not to," Wyatt said, surprised by how much he meant it. Despite the catastrophic complications this pregnancy created, the thought of his child growing inside Celine stirred something primal within him. "Then you need to decide where you stand, because I refuse to be your dirty secret while you play devoted father to Vivian's baby." The moment had come, forced by circumstances rather than courage. Wyatt reached into his pocket and placed the velvet box on the table between them. "What's this?" Celine asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Something I bought a few days ago. For you." She opened the box to reveal a solitaire diamond set in platinum, elegant, expensive, and unmistakably symbolic. "Is this supposed to be an answer?" Her voice was carefully neutral. "It's a promise." Wyatt leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I can't leave Vivian right now, not while she's in the hospital about to have our baby. But I will. After she's recovered, after things have stabilized. We'll figure this out together." Celine studied him, her expression searching. "You're really saying you'll leave your wife? After the baby comes?" "Yes." Once spoken, the commitment felt both terrifying and liberating. "I choose you, Celine, both of you," he added, glancing meaningfully at her still flat stomach. She slipped the ring onto her finger, admiring how it caught the light. "It's beautiful. I want you to have it as proof I'm serious. We can't announce anything yet, obviously, but when the time is right..." "When the time is right," she echoed, a small smile playing at her lips. "I've waited this long. So I suppose I can wait a little longer for you to do this properly." Relief flooded through Wyatt. He'd bought himself time, weeks, maybe even months before he'd have to deliver on his promise. Time to figure out how to minimize the inevitable damage, possibly even find a way to be part of both children's lives. What he didn't notice was Thea McKinnon, seated at a small table in the opposite corner of the cafe, her break from the maternity ward coinciding with his clandestine meeting. The nurse had recognized him immediately upon entering, but had intended to give him privacy, until she saw the ring. As Wyatt took Celine's hand across the table, Thea's expression hardened. She'd seen too many families torn apart by infidelity not to recognize the signs. And now, knowing that the man's wife lay vulnerable in her hospital bed, possibly about to deliver their child, while he made promises to another woman, it filled her with quiet fury. "The contractions have started again," Dr. Peterson announced, studying the readout from the monitor strapped across Vivian's abdomen. "And your blood pressure is climbing. I'm concerned." Wyatt had returned from his errand 30 minutes earlier, carrying the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, but without the body pillow he'd promised. Vivian hadn't mentioned the oversight, too focused on the increasing discomfort as the medication failed to stop her labor. "What does that mean?" Wyatt asked, the guilt of his meeting with Celine still fresh. "It means we need to prepare for delivery," Dr. Peterson said. 37 weeks is technically full term, so there's no benefit in delaying if your body is determined to have this baby now, Vivian. Vivian gripped Wyatt's hand. "But everything will be okay? The baby is okay?" "The baby's heartbeat is strong and regular," the doctor assured her. "But I am monitoring your blood pressure closely. Preeclampsia can develop quickly, and with your history I don't want to take any chances." As Dr. Peterson outlined the next steps, Wyatt felt his phone vibrate. He ignored it, focusing on Vivian's increasingly anxious expression. "I'm scared," she admitted once the doctor left. "What if something goes wrong again?" "Nothing will go wrong," Wyatt promised, the weight of his other promises sitting heavily on his conscience. "I'm right here with you." Nurse Thea entered, her expression professionally neutral despite having witnessed his betrayal less than an hour earlier. "We need to move you to a delivery room, Mrs. Holloway. The doctor wants to start Pitocin to regulate your contractions." As Thea helped Vivian transfer to a wheeled bed, she addressed Wyatt directly for the first time since his return. "Mr. Holloway, you'll need to change into scrubs if you want to be present for the delivery. I can show you where to find them." Something in her tone, a subtle coolness, made Wyatt look at her more carefully. Had she seen him at the coffee shop? Impossible. He would have noticed her. In the hallway, Thea handed him a set of blue scrubs. "Your wife needs you right now," she said, her words laden with meaning. "She's vulnerable and scared. I hope you're prepared to give her your full attention." Before he could respond, his phone vibrated again. Thea's eyes flicked to his pocket. "You might want to silence that," she suggested. "The delivery room needs to be a focused environment." Wyatt nodded, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "Of course." When she walked away, he quickly checked his messages. 4 texts from Celine. "Just told my sister about the baby. She's thrilled. When can we talk about logistics? I should start looking for a bigger apartment. I can't wait to tell people about us once it's official. Can't stop looking at the ring. It feels real now." Panic gripped him. Celine was moving forward as if everything was settled, as if his promise in the coffee shop had been the final decision rather than a desperate maneuver to manage an impossible situation. Another message appeared. "Let me know how Vivian and the baby are doing. Sending positive thoughts." The apparent sincerity of this last message confused him. Did Celine genuinely care about Vivian's welfare, or was this another manipulation? He was still trying to interpret her intentions when a scream from Vivian's room propelled him into action. Inside the delivery room, monitors were beeping frantically. Vivian's face was contorted in pain, her knuckles white as she gripped the bed rails. "What's happening?" Wyatt demanded. Dr. Peterson looked up from examining Vivian. "The baby's heart rate is dropping with each contraction. We need to move to a C-section immediately." "No," Vivian moaned. "I wanted to deliver naturally." "I know," the doctor said sympathetically, "but your blood pressure is dangerously high and the baby is showing signs of distress. We can't risk waiting." Everything accelerated. Wyatt found himself shuffled aside as the medical team prepared Vivian for surgery. Thea appeared at his side, guiding him toward the operating room. "You can still be with her," she assured him, "but you need to stay at her head near the anesthesiologist. Don't look beyond the drape they'll set up." In the harsh fluorescent light of the operating room, Vivian looked small and terrified on the table. An anesthesiologist explained the spinal block procedure, while a surgical team prepared instruments with brisk efficiency. "I'm so scared," Vivian whispered when Wyatt was finally allowed to sit beside her. "Don't leave me." "I'm right here," he promised, kissing her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." Across the room he caught Thea watching him, her expression unreadable. For a disorienting moment, he wondered if she could somehow see the diamond ring he'd placed on another woman's finger just hours earlier. The C-section proceeded with the controlled urgency of a well-rehearsed emergency. Wyatt held Vivian's hand, murmuring reassurances while studiously avoiding looking at the actual surgery taking place behind the blue drape across her chest. "You'll feel some pressure," the surgeon warned Vivian. "A lot of pressure, but no pain." Vivian's grip on Wyatt's hand tightened to bone-crushing intensity. "Talk to me," she pleaded. "Distract me." So Wyatt talked. About the nursery they'd painted, the children's books they'd collected, the future that now seemed increasingly uncertain given his promises to Celine. Yet as he spoke, he realized part of him still wanted that future with Vivian, still loved the life they'd built. "Here she comes," the surgeon announced. There was a moment of tense silence, then a high-pitched cry filled the operating room, indignant and powerful. "She's beautiful," someone said. "A perfect little girl." The baby, Audrey, was briefly held up for them to see, red-faced and squalling, before being whisked to a warming station for evaluation. Wyatt felt tears spring to his eyes at the sight of his daughter, unexpected love surging through him. "Go with her," Vivian urged, releasing his hand. "Make sure she's okay." Standing over his newborn daughter, Wyatt felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in months. This tiny human, with her wrinkled face and angry cries, depended on him completely. So did her mother, currently being stitched up a few feet away. And across town, Celine carried another life he'd helped create. Another responsibility he couldn't escape. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, announced a pediatric nurse. All her reflexes are strong. She's perfect. Wyatt. Thea's voice cut through his thoughts. Your wife needs you. He turned to find Vivian's face alarmingly pale, the medical team working with increased urgency. She's hemorrhaging, someone said, blood pressure dropping. What's happening? Wyatt demanded, torn between his newborn daughter and his wife. Postpartum hemorrhage, Thea explained tersely. Not uncommon with C-sections, but they need to control it quickly. Talk to her. Keep her calm and conscious. For the next 20 minutes, Wyatt existed in a state of pure terror as the medical team fought to stop Vivian's bleeding. He held her hand, told her how beautiful their daughter was, promised her everything would be fine, all while Thea monitored Vivian's vital signs with intense concentration. Finally, Dr. Peterson looked up. We've got it under control. She'll need a transfusion, but she's going to be okay. The relief was so profound that Wyatt's knees nearly buckled. He hadn't realized until that moment how devastated he would be to lose Vivian, the same woman he'd been planning to leave. As they prepared to move Vivian to recovery, his phone vibrated yet again. In the chaos, he'd forgotten to silence it. Without thinking, he pulled it out. The message from Celine lit up the screen clearly. Just tried on the ring with my mother's wedding band. Perfect fit. Can't wait to be Mrs. Holloway. He hurriedly shoved the phone back in his pocket, but not before Thea, standing directly behind him, had read the message over his shoulder. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. Hers filled with judgment, his with shame. Mr. Holloway, Thea said quietly, her voice steady despite the disgust evident in her expression. Your wife and daughter will be moved to the recovery room now. I suggest you focus your attention where it belongs. The rebuke stung all the more for its restraint. Wyatt nodded, unable to defend himself against the truth she'd witnessed firsthand. Hours later, with Vivian sleeping peacefully in her hospital room and baby Audrey safely ensconced in the bassinet beside her bed, Wyatt stepped into the hallway. His phone had been vibrating intermittently, Celine growing increasingly insistent about hearing from him. As he prepared to return her calls, he noticed Thea at the nurse's station, watching him. Without a word, she picked up her phone, snapped a photo of him standing outside his wife's room, then deliberately turned her screen toward him so he could see what she'd captured. The message was clear. She was documenting his behavior, creating evidence of his betrayal. Whether she planned to show this to Vivian or hospital administration remained unclear, but the moral judgment behind the action was unmistakable. Wyatt retreated back into Vivian's room, the walls of his carefully constructed deception beginning to crumble around him. The maternity floor was quiet at 3 a.m. Wyatt sat in a recliner beside Vivian's hospital bed, watching his wife and newborn daughter sleep. Audrey was swaddled tightly in a hospital blanket, only her tiny face visible, a perfect miniature with Vivian's delicate features and what looked like his chin. The events of the day had left him emotionally battered. Witnessing Vivian's near-catastrophic hemorrhage had terrified him in ways he hadn't thought possible. For those 20 minutes when the medical team fought to save her, Wyatt had been forced to confront the reality of potentially losing her forever, not through his planned abandonment but through death. The distinction had clarified something within him. He didn't want Vivian gone from his life. Yet there was Celine, now carrying his second child, wearing his ring, making plans for their future together. His phone had finally gone silent after he'd sent a terse message. Baby born. Vivian had complications but stable now. Can't talk. We'll call tomorrow. Celine's response had been surprisingly understanding. Take care of them. We'll figure everything out later. Kiss your daughter for me. The gentleness of this message confused him even more. Did she truly understand the gravity of Vivian's situation, or was this strategic compassion designed to remind him of her own superior empathy? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Thea McKinnon entered, moving quietly to check Vivian's vital signs and the IV delivering her post-surgery medications. How is she doing? Wyatt whispered. Stable, Thea replied professionally. Her blood pressure has normalized and the transfusion is complete. She's going to be sore for weeks, but she's through the worst of it. She moved to check on Audrey, her touch gentle as she placed a hand on the baby's chest to count respirations. "Your daughter is perfect," she added, a genuine smile softening her features before she remembered who she was talking to. The smile faded. "Can I ask you something?" Wyatt said, surprising himself. Thea regarded him warily. "That depends. Why did you take that picture of me in the hallway?" She finished noting Audrey's vital signs on the chart before answering. "I've been a labor and delivery nurse for 15 years, Mr. Holloway. I've seen a lot of beautiful moments and a lot of ugly ones." Her voice was low but precise. "I've watched men step out of the room where their wives just gave birth to take calls from their mistresses. I've seen the devastation when those women eventually discover the truth." Wyatt swallowed hard. "You don't know my situation." "I know enough," she countered, no longer pretending not to have witnessed his meeting with Selene. "I know your wife nearly died today bringing your child into the world, while you've been preoccupied with messages from the woman you gave a diamond ring to at Indigo Coffee." The directness of her accusation left no room for denial. Thea continued checking Vivian's IV drip as she spoke. "The picture is for my own peace of mind, because sometimes I lie awake wondering if I should have said something to the women I've seen betrayed in their most vulnerable moments." She finally met his eyes. "I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. That depends on you." "Are you threatening me?" Wyatt asked, tension coiling in his chest. "I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing," she corrected him. "Your wife deserves the truth, but she also deserves to heal from major surgery before having her world shattered. You have decisions to make, Mr. Holloway." With that, she left the room as quietly as she had entered, leaving Wyatt to contemplate the precariousness of his position. Thea McKinnon had become an unexpected moral arbiter in a situation that had spiraled far beyond his control. By morning, Vivian was awake and alert, eager to hold Audrey despite the pain from her incision. Wyatt watched their first real bonding, simultaneously moved by the beauty of it and terrified by the knowledge that he might soon destroy Vivian's happiness completely. "She has your eyes," Vivian murmured, tracing a finger along Audrey's cheek. "So blue." "And your nose," Wyatt replied, perching on the edge of the bed. "She's perfect." "We did it," Vivian said, tears welling in her eyes. "After everything, we finally have our family." The word family landed like a physical blow. Wyatt forced a smile, reaching out to touch Audrey's tiny hand. The newborn reflexively grasped his finger, her grip surprisingly strong for something so small. Something shifted within him at that touch, a primal connection that transcended his moral failings. This was his daughter. He had helped create this miracle, and now he was responsible for her well-being in ways that went beyond mere financial support or occasional visitation. "I need to go to the office for a few hours," he said, already formulating a plan. "Just to tie up some loose ends so I can take the full paternity leave we discussed." Vivian's face fell slightly. "Today? You can't take one day off for your new daughter." "It's just for a couple of hours," he promised. "Jacob's been texting me about some paperwork that needs my signature. I'll be back before lunch." The lie came easily, another brick in the wall of deception he'd built. Jacob hadn't texted him at all, but Celine had repeatedly, and he needed to see her in person away from Thea's watchful eye. "Okay," Vivian conceded, "but hurry back. The lactation consultant is coming at 1, and I want you here for that." He kissed her forehead, then Audrey's, before heading out. In the hallway, he nearly collided with Thea, who was coming on shift. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her tone making it clear she disapproved. "Work emergency," he replied stiffly. "I'll be back soon." Thea's expression was skeptical, but she moved past him without further comment. As he walked toward the elevator, he glanced back to see her watching him, her disapproval evident even from a distance. Elite Motors was relatively quiet when Wyatt arrived. At 9 a.m. on a Thursday, most of the sales staff were still having their morning coffee, preparing for the day ahead. He found Celine in her office, reviewing marketing materials. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting with a smile that faltered when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, rising from her desk. "Is it Vivian, the baby?" "They're both fine," he assured her. "Vivian had some complications after the C-section, but she's stable now. Audrey is perfect, 7 pounds 2 ounces. "Audrey," Celine repeated. "That's a beautiful name." An awkward silence fell between them. Celine's hand moved unconsciously to her still flat stomach, the diamond on her finger catching the light. "We need to talk," Wyatt finally said. "That doesn't sound promising." Her voice took on a defensive edge. "You're not backing out already, are you?" Before he could respond, Jacob Reinhardt appeared in the doorway. The dealership owner looked uncharacteristically grim. "Wyatt, just the man I need to see. My office now." The tone left no room for discussion. Wyatt exchanged a quick glance with Celine, whose expression had shifted to concern. In Jacob's office, the older man closed the door firmly and stood with his back against it. "Want to explain this?" He tossed a folder onto his desk. Wyatt opened it to find printouts of financial records, specifically the financing packages he'd arranged for several high-end clients over the past 6 months. "Standard financing documentation," Wyatt said cautiously. "What about it? Standard?" Jacob's face flushed with anger. "There's nothing standard about falsifying financial qualifications to approve loans for underqualified buyers, or about taking cash kickbacks that don't appear anywhere in our books." Wyatt's stomach dropped. He'd been careful, or thought he had been. The schemes hadn't seemed particularly risky. Helping a few clients with questionable credit qualify for luxury vehicles by tweaking their application numbers in exchange for cash bonuses paid directly to him. The dealership still made the sales, the finance companies got their loans mostly, and Wyatt supplemented his already substantial income with untraceable cash. Cash that had paid for, among other things, Celine's diamond ring. "I can explain," he began, though he wasn't sure he could. "Save it," Jacob snapped. "The audit team found discrepancies in over 20 deals you handled personally. They're still digging, but we're talking potential bank fraud, Wyatt, federal charges." "It's not that serious," Wyatt protested. "Just some creative financing to help close difficult deals." "Creative financing?" Jacob repeated incredulously. "You falsified income documentation. You accepted undisclosed payments from clients. You put this entire dealership at risk." The severity of his situation began to sink in. Wyatt had been so focused on his personal problems that he'd overlooked the professional sword hanging over his head. "No one's filing charges yet," Jacob continued, marginally calmer. "But I've had to contact legal, and they're saying we need to conduct a full internal investigation before deciding how to proceed." "What does that mean for me?" "It means you're suspended. Effective immediately. With pay for now while we sort through this mess." Jacob's expression softened slightly. "Look, I like you, Wyatt. You're the best salesman I've ever had, but this crosses every line." Wyatt nodded, numb. "I understand. Go home to your wife and new baby," Jacob advised, "and for God's sake hire a lawyer." As Wyatt left the office, he felt his carefully constructed world beginning to collapse. His professional reputation, his financial security, his secret relationship with Celine, his marriage to Vivian, all were suddenly in jeopardy, interconnected in ways he hadn't fully appreciated until now. Celine was waiting by his office, her expression anxious. "What happened?" He pulled her inside and closed the door. "I've been suspended. They found some irregularities in my financing deals." "How bad is it?" "Bad," he admitted. "Potentially criminal." Celine paled. "Criminal? Wyatt, what did you do?" The question struck him as almost funny given their shared moral compromises. "Nothing that unusual in this business, but I got sloppy apparently." She sat on the edge of his desk, visibly processing this new information. "So what does this mean? For us, I mean." "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Everything's complicated now. I'm barely keeping my head above water with Vivian's medical situation, the new baby, and now this investigation." Celine's eyes narrowed. "You're stalling again." "I'm not stalling. I'm trying to navigate an impossible situation that just got exponentially worse." "Our baby doesn't care about your professional problems, Wyatt," she said, her hand protective over her stomach. "Neither do I. We need clarity on where we stand." The pressure from all sides was becoming unbearable. Wyatt ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I meant what I said yesterday," he finally told her. "I choose you, but I need time to handle this investigation and make sure Vivian is stable after her surgery. We're talking weeks, not months." Celine studied him for a long moment, as if assessing his sincerity. "2 weeks," she finally said. "You have 2 weeks to tell Vivian about us, about the baby. After that, I'll tell her myself." "You wouldn't." "I absolutely would." Her voice was steel. "I've compromised my integrity for 8 months, Wyatt. I've helped you lie to your wife. I've hidden our relationship from everyone at work. I've settled for stolen moments. No more. Not with this baby coming." The ultimatum was clear and non-negotiable. Wyatt nodded slowly, recognizing he had run out of options for delay. 2 weeks, he agreed. I'll tell her. Back at the hospital, Wyatt found Vivian sitting up in bed, chatting with her parents who had arrived from Dallas. The scene of domestic happiness, new grandparents cooing over Audrey, Vivian glowing despite her ordeal, heightened his sense of impending destruction. There he is. Vivian's father, Richard, clapped him on the shoulder. The new dad. How does it feel? Overwhelming, Wyatt answered truthfully. In every way possible. Vivian's mother, Eleanor, insisted on taking multiple photos of the new family, positioning Wyatt beside Vivian on the bed with Audrey cradled between them. Each click of the camera felt like another moment of a false narrative being preserved for posterity. When her parents left for lunch, promising to return with Vivian's favorite takeout, Wyatt finally had a moment alone with his wife. How are you feeling? He asked, genuinely concerned. Sore, she admitted, but they say I'm healing well. Dr. Peterson thinks we might be able to go home in 3 days if everything continues this way. Home, where he would eventually have to tell her that their marriage was over, that he had fathered another child with another woman, that their perfect little family was built on quicksand. Wyatt, what's wrong? Vivian's intuition, always sharp, caught the shadow crossing his face. Nothing, he lied. Just tired. It was a long night. For both of us, she said with a small smile, but worth every second. She gazed down at Audrey, sleeping peacefully in her arms. I keep thinking about everything we went through to get here. The losses, the treatments, the hope that kept slipping away. And now she's actually here. The sincerity of her joy twisted in his chest like a knife. How could he take this away from her? Yet how could he continue living this double life? Especially now that Selene was pregnant and Jacob was investigating his financial misconduct. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Thea entered with medication for Vivian and a fresh swaddle blanket for Audrey. Time for your pain management, she said to Vivian, and we should try nursing again before Audrey gets too hungry. As Thea helped Vivian position the baby for breastfeeding, her professional demeanor never wavered. But Wyatt caught her watching him, her eyes communicating a silent message that he understood perfectly. Time was running out. That evening, after Vivian's parents departed and dinner trays were cleared away, Wyatt found himself alone with his wife and daughter again. Vivian was drowsy from pain medication, but insisted on staying awake to talk. I was thinking, she said, her voice soft, once I'm recovered enough, we should have a proper family photo session, something we can send out with birth announcements. Wyatt nodded, his throat tight. Whatever you want. And we should start looking at preschools, she continued, revealing how far ahead she was planning their daughter's future. The wait lists for the good ones are ridiculous. My colleague had to apply when her son was only 3 months old. Each word she spoke about their future together was another stone added to the weight of his guilt. Wyatt found it increasingly difficult to breathe, the walls of the hospital room seeming to close in around him. Vivian, he began, not sure what he was going to say, but unable to maintain the charade any longer. A sharp rap at the door made them both look up. Thea stood in the doorway, her expression grave. Mr. Holloway, could I speak with you for a moment? In the hallway, Thea got straight to the point. A woman named Selene Archer has been calling the nurses' station, asking about Mrs. Holloway and the baby. She identified herself as a close family friend, but seemed to have information only you would have shared. Wyatt closed his eyes briefly. I'll handle it. See that you do, Thea replied. Then she held out a plain white envelope. I found this in your wife's room earlier when you were gone. I believe it fell from your jacket pocket. He took the envelope with numb fingers, already knowing what it contained even before opening it. Inside was a receipt for the diamond ring he'd purchased for Selene, along with a handwritten note from the jeweler, thanking him for his business and wishing him and the future Mrs. Holloway every happiness. I haven't shown this to your wife, Thea said quietly. That's not my place, but Mr. Holloway, this can't continue. She deserves to hear the truth from you, not from a misdirected phone call or a forgotten receipt. I know, he whispered. She's my patient, Thea continued, her voice firm but not unkind. My priority is her well-being. Right now she's fragile, physically and emotionally. You need to consider carefully how and when you tell her. Wyatt looked back toward Vivian's room, where his wife was gently rocking their newborn daughter. I don't know how to do this without destroying her. The destruction has already happened, Thea said bluntly. She just doesn't know it yet. She handed him a second envelope, this one sealed. This contains the photos I took along with notes documenting what I witnessed. My shift ends tomorrow at 7 p.m. If you haven't told Vivian the truth by then, I will give her this envelope. Not because I want to hurt her, but because continuing this deception while she makes plans for a future that doesn't exist is crueler than the truth. The ultimatum left no room for negotiation. Wyatt nodded, understanding that his time had finally run out. One more thing, Thea added. Ms. Archer mentioned she's pregnant. Is that true? The direct question startled him. Yes, he admitted. Thea's expression registered disappointment, but not surprise. Then there's a second innocent child involved in this situation. All the more reason to start being honest, don't you think? With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Wyatt standing in the hospital corridor, the two envelopes heavy in his hands, physical evidence of the lies he could no longer maintain. The next morning dawned with a clarity that seemed almost offensive, given the turmoil of Wyatt's thoughts. He had spent a restless night in the recliner beside Vivian's bed, watching her sleep, rehearsing words that might somehow minimize the pain he was about to inflict. Dr. Peterson visited early, pleased with Vivian's recovery. The bleeding has stopped completely, and your vital signs are stable, she told Vivian. If this continues, we can discuss discharge tomorrow. That's wonderful, Vivian replied, squeezing Wyatt's hand. I can't wait to get Audrey home. After the doctor left, a lactation consultant arrived to help with breastfeeding, then a pediatrician to check Audrey's progress. The parade of medical professionals offered Wyatt a temporary reprieve, but by early afternoon, he knew he could delay no longer. Vivian was sitting up in bed, Audrey sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside her. The room was quiet, with afternoon sunlight casting a warm glow through the window. Viv, he said, his voice strained, we need to talk. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. What's wrong? Is it the dealership? Did something happen while you were there yesterday? Yes and no, he began, his prepared speech already unraveling. There's a situation at work, an investigation into some financial irregularities. I've been suspended. Her eyes widened. Suspended? Wyatt, what did you do? I made some questionable decisions with client financing, he admitted. It's complicated, but potentially serious. How serious? Are we talking criminal charges? Possibly. He swallowed hard. But that's not the only thing I need to tell you. Vivian's expression shifted, concern deepening to foreboding. What is it? Just tell me. I've been... The words stuck in his throat. He forced himself to continue, looking directly into her eyes. I've been having an affair for the past 8 months with Celine Archer, the marketing manager at Elite. The color drained from Vivian's face. For several seconds she said nothing, as if processing a foreign language. 8 months, she finally repeated, while I was pregnant, while we were trying to save our miracle baby. Wyatt nodded, unable to speak. Were you ever going to tell me? Her voice was oddly calm, almost detached. I don't know, he answered honestly. I kept telling myself it would end, that it was temporary, that I could fix things. Fix things. She gave a hollow laugh. And is it over now? Is that why you're telling me? Because you've fixed things? This was the moment, the final threshold of truth. Wyatt took a deep breath. No, he said quietly. It's not over. Celine is pregnant. Vivian flinched as if he'd struck her. Her hand moved protectively to her cesarean incision, a reflexive gesture against physical pain that mirrored the emotional blow. Get out, she whispered. Vivian, please. Get out. The force of her scream startled Audrey awake. The baby began to cry, her wails joining the shattered silence of the room. Thea appeared in the doorway, alerted by the commotion. She took in the scene with a practiced eye. Vivian's pale, devastated face, Wyatt's posture of defeat, the crying newborn. Mr. Holloway, she said firmly, I think you should step outside while I help Mrs. Holloway with the baby. Wyatt moved toward the door, stopping briefly beside Vivian's bed. I'm sorry, he said, the words hopelessly inadequate. I never meant for any of this to happen. Vivian didn't look at him. Just go, she said, tears streaming down her face. I can't even look at you right now. In the hallway, Wyatt leaned against the wall, the full impact of what he'd done finally hitting him with devastating clarity. Through the partially closed door, he could hear Thea's gentle voice helping Vivian calm Audrey, offering quiet comfort that he no longer had the right to provide. He had told the truth at last. But instead of the relief he'd hoped for, He felt only the crushing weight of consequences bearing down upon him, consequences that would alter the course of 4 lives forever. Vivian stared at the ceiling of her hospital room, her body numb from more than just the pain medication. 12 hours had passed since Wyatt's confession, 12 hours of cycling through shock, disbelief, rage, and an emptiness so profound it seemed to hollow her from the inside out. Mrs. Holloway. Thea's voice was gentle as she entered the room. It's time for Audrey's feeding. Vivian turned her head, eyes focusing on the bassinet where her daughter slept peacefully, blissfully unaware that her entire world had shattered before she'd even properly entered it. I don't know if I can, Vivian whispered. Thea moved to the bedside, adjusting Vivian's position with practiced hands. You can, 1 moment at a time. As Thea placed Audrey in her arms, Vivian felt the weight of her daughter against her chest, solid, real, demanding her attention despite the emotional hurricane raging within her. The baby rooted instinctively, latching onto her breast with surprising strength. That's it, Thea encouraged. You're both doing beautifully. Vivian looked down at Audrey's face, searching for traces of Wyatt and finding them in the curve of her chin, the shape of her eyes. It hurt to see him there, yet she couldn't look away. How do I do this? The question encompassed far more than breastfeeding. How do I raise her, knowing her father has another child on the way? How do I explain that to her someday? Thea checked Vivian's vital signs before answering. 1 day at a time. Right now, you focus on healing, physically and emotionally. The future will sort itself out. Have you called my parents? Vivian asked, suddenly remembering they were due to visit again today. I spoke with your mother this morning. She and your father are on their way. Relief washed over Vivian. She needed her family now, more than ever. Has he tried to come back? She couldn't bring herself to say Wyatt's name. Security has been instructed not to allow him onto the maternity floor without your permission, Thea confirmed. Hospital policy allows us to restrict visitors at the patient's request. A small mercy in the midst of catastrophe. Vivian nodded, grateful for the buffer between herself and the man who had destroyed her world while she was at her most vulnerable. What happens now, she asked, more to herself than to Thea. The nurse adjusted Audrey's position slightly to improve her latch. Now you feed your daughter, then you rest, then you feed her again. The world outside these walls can wait. The simplicity of this directive, focus on the immediate, the essential, gave Vivian something to cling to as the ground continued to crumble beneath her. In the hospital parking lot, Wyatt sat in his car, staring at the building that housed his wife and newborn daughter. Security had politely but firmly escorted him from the maternity floor after Vivian's request. He'd spent the night in his office at the dealership, using the shower in the executive bathroom, trying to formulate a plan that was rapidly disintegrating. His phone buzzed with a message from Celine. What happened? You didn't come home last night, and you're not answering calls. Home. As if his apartment was now their shared space, despite the fact he'd never officially moved in. Before he could respond, a call came through. His attorney, David Mercer. I've been in touch with the dealership's legal team, David began without preamble. The situation is worse than we initially thought. They've found evidence of systematic fraud in at least 32 financing deals you handled over the past year. Wyatt closed his eyes. What are we talking about here? Worst case scenario. Federal charges for bank fraud, wire fraud, possibly money laundering depending on how you handled the kickbacks. We're looking at potential jail time, Wyatt. The reality of his situation hit with fresh force. What are my options? Cooperate fully. Return any misappropriated funds if possible. We need to demonstrate contrition and willingness to make amends. David paused. Where did the money go anyway? The kickbacks must have been substantial. Wyatt thought of the diamond ring on Celine's finger, the weekend trips, the apartment he'd been renting for their rendezvous. Living expenses, nothing extravagant. Well, start gathering financial records. The FBI will want to see exactly how much went where. After ending the call, Wyatt sat motionless, watching hospital staff come and go. His carefully constructed life was collapsing on all fronts. Professional, personal, financial. Yet all he could think about was Vivian's face when he'd told her about Celine's pregnancy, the absolute devastation in her eyes. His phone buzzed again. Celine was calling now, her third attempt in an hour. He finally answered. What's going on? Her voice was tense. Did you tell her? Yes, he said flatly. I told her everything. A pause. How did she take it? The absurdity of the question nearly made Wyatt laugh. How do you think? She's just had major surgery, nearly died from blood loss, and now her husband tells her he's been cheating for their entire pregnancy and has another baby on the way. Don't take that tone with me, Celine snapped. This wasn't one-sided, Wyatt. We're in this together. Were they? In the harsh light of consequences, Wyatt was beginning to see the selfishness of his actions with painful clarity. I need some time, he said. Everything's falling apart at once. The dealership investigation is escalating. FBI involvement, potential criminal charges. What? You never mentioned anything criminal. I'm handling it, he lied. But between that and Vivian, I just need space to figure things out. Space. Celine's voice cooled. That's a convenient step back from your promises. I'm not stepping back from anything, Wyatt insisted, though even to his own ears the words sounded hollow. But I can't make any major moves while I'm under investigation. It would look like I'm fleeing. The explanation was plausible enough to buy him time. Celine fell silent for a moment before responding. Fine. Take your time. But remember, I have a doctor's appointment next week to confirm everything. Our baby isn't going to wait for your legal troubles to resolve. After hanging up, Wyatt started his car, unsure where to go. He couldn't return to the hospital. The house he shared with Vivian no longer felt like an option. Celine's apartment represented a commitment he was increasingly uncertain of. For the first time in his adult life, Wyatt Holloway had nowhere to go. When Eleanor and Richard Matthews arrived at the hospital, they found their daughter cradling her newborn, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. One look at Vivian's face told Eleanor everything she needed to know. What did he do? She asked quietly, taking the seat beside Vivian's bed. The story spilled out in broken sentences, Vivian's voice alternating between rage and despair as she recounted Wyatt's betrayal. 8 months, Richard repeated, his normally gentle face hardening with anger, while you were struggling through a high-risk pregnancy. And now she's pregnant too, Vivian added, the words like glass in her throat. He's going to have 2 children, born months apart. Eleanor took Audrey from Vivian's arms, cradling her granddaughter with one hand while gripping her daughter's hand with the other. You are not alone in this. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. What am I going to do? Vivian asked, her academic's mind struggling to form a logical plan amid emotional devastation. I can't go back to that house. I can't face him every day, but I don't want to deprive Audrey of her father either. First things first, Richard said pragmatically. You're coming home with us to Dallas when you're discharged. You can stay as long as you need while you figure out next steps. The offer of sanctuary was exactly what Vivian needed. Austin had been home for 7 years, but now every street, every restaurant, every corner of the city she loved was tainted by association with Wyatt. What about my job? The semester's not over for another month. Medical leave, Eleanor suggested. After a C-section and everything else, no one would question it. As they discussed logistics, Thea entered with discharge paperwork. Dr. Peterson has approved your release for tomorrow morning, as long as your vitals remain stable overnight. Thank you, Vivian said, meaning far more than just the medical update. For everything. Thea smiled, her kind eyes conveying understanding. I'm just doing my job, but I did want to mention I'm off duty tomorrow, but I'd be happy to help with the transition home, or wherever you're planning to go. We're taking her to Dallas, Eleanor explained, to our home. That's good, Thea nodded. A change of environment can be helpful. She hesitated, then added, I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of compiling some resources. She handed Vivian a folder. Support groups, legal information regarding separation and custody, counseling options, just in case they're useful. Vivian accepted the folder, touched by the nurse's thoughtfulness. I don't know how to thank you. Take care of yourself and that beautiful baby, Thea replied. That's thanks enough. After the nurse left, Vivian opened the folder to find meticulously organized information, everything she would need to begin rebuilding her life from the wreckage Wyatt had left behind. Across town, in the offices of Austin Chronicle, journalist Mackenzie Reed scanned the tip that had just landed in her inbox with growing interest. Luxury car dealership Elite Motors under federal investigation for financing fraud. Sales manager Wyatt Holloway at center of scandal. Internal documents show systematic falsification of loan applications. Mackenzie picked up her phone and dialed her editor. I think I've got something solid on that Elite Motors tip. Multiple sources confirming the FBI's involvement. "Get it verified and file by tomorrow," her editor instructed. If the feds are involved, this could be bigger than just one corrupt sales manager. After hanging up, Mackenzie began making calls to her contacts at the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI, the State Banking Commission, and the Car Dealership Regulatory Board. By nightfall, she had confirmed enough details to begin drafting her story. Exclusive: luxury dealership under federal investigation for financing fraud. The story would hit the morning edition just as Vivian Holloway was being discharged from the hospital. Silicon Archer sat in her apartment, staring at the diamond ring on her finger with growing unease. Wyatt's behavior since confessing to Vivian had been distant, evasive. Their conversation in the car had left her with a creeping suspicion that he might be reconsidering his promises. She placed a protective hand over her stomach. The pregnancy was still in its early stages, barely 6 weeks along, but already she felt fiercely protective of the life growing inside her. Whatever happened with Wyatt, this baby was real and she was its mother. Her phone chimed with an email alert from a colleague at the dealership, a link to the Austin Chronicle website. The headline made her blood run cold. Exclusive: luxury dealership under federal investigation for financing fraud. The article named Wyatt directly, detailing allegations of falsified loan applications, undisclosed cash payments, and potential federal charges. Celine read it twice, her breathing shallow as implications settled around her like falling ash. The man she'd convinced herself to love, the father of her child, was not just an adulterer but potentially a criminal. The distinction felt important somehow, a line crossed that changed everything. She slipped the ring from her finger, studying its sparkle under the lamplight. Had this too been purchased with fraudulent funds? Was she not just the other woman, but an unwitting accomplice? With sudden clarity, Celine realized she needed to protect herself and her baby, not just from public scandal, but potentially from legal jeopardy. Wyatt's promises of a future together seemed increasingly hollow, built on the same foundation of lies he'd sold to everyone else in his life. She picked up her phone and dialed her brother, an attorney specializing in corporate law. "Michael, I need your help, urgently." Morning light filtered through the hospital room window as Vivian dressed carefully, mindful of her incision. Eleanor handled Audrey, expertly changing and swaddling the newborn, while Richard loaded the few personal items into a suitcase. Dr. Peterson had completed her final examination, pronouncing Vivian physically recovered enough for discharge, while emphasizing the need for continued rest and care over the coming weeks. "The physical healing is straightforward," the doctor had said kindly. "The emotional healing takes longer. Be gentle with yourself." As Vivian settled into the wheelchair that would transport her to the hospital exit, Thea appeared, dressed in civilian clothes rather than scrubs. "I thought you might want some extra help getting settled at your parents' place," she said. "I'm headed to Dallas myself to visit my sister this weekend. I could follow your car, help with Audrey on the drive." The offer represented more than just practical assistance. It was emotional support from someone who had witnessed both the joy of Audrey's birth and the pain of Wyatt's betrayal. Vivian nodded gratefully. "That would be wonderful, if you're sure it's not an imposition." "Not at all," Thea assured her. "I was planning the trip anyway." As they prepared to leave, a hospital administrator appeared with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Holloway, there are reporters in the lobby asking for a statement regarding your husband. Something about a federal investigation?" Vivian exchanged bewildered looks with her parents. "What investigation?" The administrator handed her a folded newspaper, the morning edition of the Austin Chronicle, with Wyatt's professional headshot prominently displayed beside the headline about financing fraud. "Oh my God," Vivian whispered, scanning the article. The accusations against Wyatt went beyond personal betrayal into criminal territory. Falsified documents, financial fraud, possible federal charges. "Is there another exit we can use?" Richard asked the administrator. "My daughter has just had major surgery and a newborn to protect." The administrator nodded sympathetically. "We can take you through the staff entrance. I'll have security clear a path to your vehicle." As they navigated the alternate route, avoiding the waiting reporters, Vivian felt a strange sense of disassociation, as if she were watching these events happen to someone else. The woman in the wheelchair, new mother, freshly betrayed wife, unwitting participant in a public scandal, couldn't possibly be her. Yet Audrey's weight in her arms was real, as was the surgical pain when the wheelchair bumped over an uneven section of flooring. This was her life now, unrecognizable from what it had been just days ago. Outside, in the secluded staff parking area, Richard brought the car around while Eleanor and Thea helped Vivian inside, securing Audrey in her car seat with meticulous care. "I'll follow right behind you," Thea promised, heading to her own vehicle. As they pulled away from the hospital, Vivian's phone lit up with Wyatt's name. After 4 ignored calls, she finally answered, putting the call on speaker. "Have you seen the paper?" His voice was tight with panic. "Yes." Her response was flat, emotionless. "Where are you?" "I went to the hospital, but they said you'd been discharged. I'm leaving Austin with Audrey, going to stay with my parents for a while." "Leaving?" His voice rose. "Vivian, you can't just take our daughter." "Can't I?" she interrupted, a spark of anger breaking through her emotional numbness. "You were planning to leave us for another woman and her baby. Now I'm simply saving you the trouble." "That's not fair. I never said I wouldn't be part of Audrey's life." "Nothing about this is fair, Wyatt." Vivian's voice finally broke. "Nothing about what you've done to our family is fair. So don't talk to me about fairness while you're facing federal fraud charges, on top of having a pregnant mistress." A heavy silence fell between them. When Wyatt spoke again, his voice had lost its defensive edge. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "But it did happen," Vivian replied softly. "And now we all have to live with the consequences. I still want to be in Audrey's life. She's my daughter too." Vivian looked at the tiny infant sleeping peacefully in her car seat, unaware of the upheaval surrounding her first days of life. "My lawyer will be in touch about visitation arrangements," she said finally. "Once things have settled. For now, I need space to figure out what comes next." "Your lawyer?" Wyatt sounded surprised. "You've already hired a lawyer?" "I will be," Vivian confirmed, a new resolve strengthening her voice. "Unlike you, I believe in dealing directly with reality, not hiding from it until it explodes in my face." She ended the call before he could respond, handing the phone to her mother, who squeezed her hand in silent support. As they merged onto Interstate 35, heading north toward Dallas, Vivian gazed out at the Austin skyline growing smaller in the distance. The city where she'd built her career, her marriage, her dreams of family, now receding like a tide, taking with it the remnants of the life she'd thought was hers. Beside her, Audrey stirred, making the soft mewling sounds that preceded hunger. Vivian turned away from the window, focusing on her daughter's needs. The past was behind her now, impossible to reclaim. What mattered was the future, her future, Audrey's future, and the strength she would need to build it anew from the rubble of betrayal. In the car following closely behind them, Thea watched the interaction through the rear window, a mother turning toward her child, the deliberate choice to focus forward rather than back. It was the first step in a long journey of healing, but an essential one. In her years as a labor and delivery nurse, Thea had witnessed both the best and worst of human behavior in moments of crisis. Rarely had she seen the quiet dignity that Vivian displayed in the face of such devastating circumstances. The highway stretched before them, a metaphor Thea didn't miss, the long road ahead, uncertain but moving forward nonetheless. Behind them, Austin grew smaller, and with it, the immediate pain of Wyatt's betrayal. Ahead lay Dallas, temporary sanctuary in the storm, and beyond that, a future Vivian would forge on her terms, not his. The first decisive step had been taken. Vivian Holloway was not running away. She was moving toward something new, something that would be built on honesty and strength rather than deception and compromise. It was a distinction that made all the difference. 3 months after fleeing Austin, Vivian sat in the sunlit breakfast nook of her parents' Dallas home, nursing Audrey while reviewing documents from her attorney. The formal notification of federal charges against Wyatt had arrived the previous day, a lengthy indictment detailing 18 counts of fraud, falsification of loan documents, and accepting illegal kickbacks. "They want me to testify," she told her mother, who was preparing breakfast nearby. "The prosecutor says my testimony about Wyatt's spending habits and lifestyle could be crucial to establishing the pattern of fraud." Eleanor placed a cup of tea beside her daughter. "And how do you feel about that?" "Conflicted." Vivian adjusted Audrey to her shoulder, patting the baby's back gently. "Part of me wants nothing more to do with him or his legal problems. But another part wants justice," Eleanor finished for her. "Is it justice I want, or revenge?" Vivian wondered aloud. "Sometimes I'm not sure I know the difference anymore." The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Eleanor went to answer it, returning moments later with an unexpected visitor. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression carefully neutral. "A Celine Archer." Vivian's heart lurched. The name she'd tried so hard not to think about, the woman whose existence had shattered her world, now standing in her parents' home. "I can ask her to leave," Eleanor offered when Vivian didn't immediately respond. "No," Vivian handed Audrey to her mother. "I'll see her." In the formal living room, Celine Archer stood examining family photographs on the mantel. Her pregnancy was now visibly apparent, the slight swell of her abdomen a stark reminder of the shared connection between them. She turned as Vivian entered, and for a moment the two women simply observed each other, unwilling participants in the same tragic play. "Thank you for seeing me," Celine began. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," Vivian admitted. "Why are you here?" Celine placed a manila envelope on the coffee table. "The FBI interviewed me last week about Wyatt's finances. I realized something you should know. The diamond ring he gave me, the apartment he rented for us, our weekend trips, they were all paid for with money from his fraud scheme." Vivian sat down slowly, processing this information. "And you're just discovering this now? I suspected something wasn't right when the news first broke, but I had no idea about the extent of it." Celine gestured to the envelope. "Those are copies of financial records I found, receipts, bank statements, evidence that might help the prosecution's case. I've already provided the originals to the FBI. Why bring this to me? Why not just give it to the authorities?" Celine sat across from Vivian, her hands resting protectively over her stomach in a gesture Vivian remembered from her own pregnancy. "Because I owe you that much. Wyatt didn't just betray you as a husband. He used money obtained through fraud to finance our affair. That makes me an unwitting accomplice to his crimes." The admission hung in the air between them. Vivian studied the woman who had been her unknown rival for 8 months, trying to reconcile the poised professional before her with the homewrecker she'd imagined in her darkest moments. "Have you spoken to him recently?" Vivian finally asked. "Not since I learned about the fraud," Celine replied. "He's called, texted, even came to my apartment, but I've refused to see him. My lawyer advised against any contact during the investigation." "Your lawyer?" "Right." Vivian nodded. "We're both lawyered up now, dealing with the wreckage he left behind." An unexpected moment of solidarity passed between them. Two women manipulated by the same man, both now pregnant or caring for his children, both facing the public fallout of his deceptions. "I want you to know," Celine said carefully, "that I've declined his financial support for the baby. I won't accept money that was potentially obtained through illegal means." The statement carried significant implications. Vivian had been wrestling with the same ethical dilemma regarding child support for Audrey. "What will you do?" Vivian found herself asking. "Start over. I've accepted a position with a marketing firm in Houston, far enough from Austin to avoid the gossip, close enough to allow for whatever custody arrangement the courts decide." Celine paused. "I'm not trying to insert myself into your life, Vivian. I just thought you deserved to know the full truth before you make decisions about cooperating with the prosecution." As Celine prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Our children will be half-siblings. I don't expect us to be friends, but perhaps someday for their sake. One impossible situation at a time," Vivian replied, not unkindly. "Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day." After Celine's departure, Vivian returned to the kitchen where her mother waited with Audrey. Without a word, Eleanor embraced her daughter, holding her as she had when Vivian was small and the world's injustices seemed insurmountable. "I'll testify," Vivian said firmly, "not for revenge, but because it's right, because the truth matters, no matter how painful." In the sterile conference room of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Austin, Wyatt Holloway sat beside his defense attorney, listening as federal prosecutor Erin Morales outlined the case against him. "We have documented evidence of fraudulent loan applications spanning a 3-year period," Morales explained, her tone coolly professional. "Bank records showing cash deposits that coincide with the approval of these loans. Witness testimonies from clients who paid you directly for arranging financing they wouldn't otherwise qualify for. And now," she slid a document across the table, "financial records showing how you spent those illegal profits." Wyatt glanced at the spreadsheet, a detailed accounting of his expenditures over the past year, including payments for the apartment where he met Celine, the diamond ring he'd given her, weekend getaways, and various luxury items. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, recognizing some of the entries as information only Celine would have. That's not relevant, Morales replied. What matters is that we can establish both the fraud itself and your motive, maintaining an extravagant lifestyle that included supporting a relationship outside your marriage. Wyatt's attorney, David Mercer, interjected smoothly. My client maintains his innocence regarding the fraud charges. As for his personal life, that's hardly the concern of federal prosecutors. It becomes our concern when he uses the proceeds of financial crimes to fund that personal life, Morales countered. She turned her attention back to Wyatt. Mr. Holloway, I'm authorized to offer a plea agreement, significantly reduced charges in exchange for your cooperation in identifying others at Elite Motors who may have been involved in similar schemes. There was no one else, Wyatt insisted. This was my operation alone. That's difficult to believe, Morales said skeptically. A fraud scheme of this magnitude, running for years at a prominent dealership, management had to be aware at some level. Wyatt shook his head. Jacob Reinhardt runs a clean business. He had no knowledge of my methods. The loyalty to his former boss seemed almost quaint given the circumstances. Morales made a note before continuing. Your wife has agreed to testify about your financial habits during your marriage. So has Ms. Archer. And we've subpoenaed a hospital employee, a nurse named Thea McKinnon, who witnessed relevant interactions between you and Ms. Archer during your wife's hospitalization. At the mention of Thea's name, Wyatt paled visibly. The nurse had seen him at his worst moment, giving Celine a diamond ring while Vivian was in labor. This is a financial crimes case, David argued. My client's personal indiscretions, however regrettable, are not relevant to the charges. They establish motive, means, and opportunity, Morales replied firmly, and they speak directly to his character and credibility, both of which he has put at issue by maintaining his innocence. After the prosecutors left to give them time to consider the plea offer, David turned to Wyatt with grave concern. They have a strong case, and now they're bringing in personal elements that will make you deeply unsympathetic to a jury. 18 counts could mean up to 30 years if you're convicted on all charges. The plea offer reduces that to 5 to 7 years. 5 years in federal prison, Wyatt repeated numbly. With good behavior, you could be out in 3. The alternative is risking decades behind bars. Wyatt stared at the documents spread before him, the meticulous record of his downfall. His phone vibrated with a text from Celine. We need to talk about your son. DNA test confirms paternity. My lawyer will contact yours regarding custody. His son, the child he had yet to meet, now 3 months along in Celine's womb. By the time the baby was born, Wyatt might already be in prison, missing the first years of his son's life just as he was missing Audrey's early months. I need time to think, he told David. But time was the one luxury Wyatt Holloway no longer had. The Houston Medical Center was bustling when Celine's water broke, 6 weeks before her due date. Alone in her new city, she called the only person who had reached out to her since she'd relocated, Thea McKinnon, whose compassion had extended beyond her professional duties to occasional check-ins on both Vivian and, surprisingly, Celine. I'm on my way, Thea promised. Have you called your doctor? They said to come in immediately, Celine confirmed, trying to keep panic from her voice. It's too early, Thea. What if something's wrong? Focus on getting to the hospital. I'll meet you there. In the delivery room, hours later, Celine gripped Thea's hand as contractions intensified. The medical team had attempted to halt the premature labor without success. The baby's heart rate is dropping with contractions, the obstetrician announced grimly. We need to move to an emergency C-section. As they prepped Celine for surgery, she fixed desperate eyes on Thea. Will you call Wyatt? He should know, even if he couldn't be there, even if he had abandoned her once the fraud investigation began, even if he was facing imminent imprisonment. Thea nodded, stepping out to make the call, while Celine was wheeled to the operating room. The phone rang multiple times before Wyatt finally answered. Mr. Holloway, this is Thea McKinnon. I'm with Selena at Houston Medical Center. She's in premature labor. They're performing an emergency C-section right now. There was a long pause before Wyatt responded, his voice strained. Is the baby okay? We don't know yet. The next few hours will be critical. Another pause. I can't come. I'm under court supervision pending trial. I can't leave the Austin area. She didn't expect you to come, Thea replied, a hint of judgment creeping into her professional tone. She just wanted you to know. The baby boy was born at 11:42 p.m., weighing just 4 pounds 3 ounces. His lungs were underdeveloped, requiring immediate intervention in the NICU. Celine caught only a glimpse of her son before he was whisked away by the neonatal team. "He's a fighter," the nurse assured her. "Premature but strong vital signs." In the recovery room, Selina lay staring at the ceiling, the empty feeling in her arms a physical ache. Thea sat beside her, offering silent support. "I named him Carter," Celine said finally. "Carter Archer, not Holloway." The decision to give her son her surname rather than Wyatt's had come after long deliberation. Some might view it as spite, but for Celine, it represented a clean break from a man who had proven himself unworthy of the connection. "It's a strong name," Thea agreed. "I thought I loved him," Celine whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I convinced myself what we had was special enough to justify the pain we caused Vivian, but it was all built on lies. His marriage, his success, his promises to me. None of it was real." Thea took her hand. "Your son is real. Your strength is real. That's what matters now." In that sterile hospital room, as monitors beeped and medical staff moved efficiently around them, Celine Archer faced the reality of single motherhood with a premature baby and a future shadowed by her connection to a man facing federal prison. Yet beneath the fear and uncertainty, a new resolve was forming, a determination to create an honest life for herself and her son, free from the web of deception that had entangled her. Meanwhile, in Austin, Wyatt sat in his sparsely furnished apartment, staring at the phone in his hand. His son had been born, premature, struggling, without his father present. Audrey was growing, changing daily in Dallas, equally without his presence. 2 children he had helped create, now essentially fatherless due to his own actions. The walls seemed to close in around him as the full weight of consequence pressed down. His lawyer had been clear. The prosecution's case was airtight. Conviction was all but certain. The only question was how many years he would lose, unless he ran. The thought had been growing in his mind for weeks, fleeing the country before trial, starting over somewhere without extradition. He had managed to hide some cash from the investigators, enough to establish himself abroad if he moved quickly. With sudden clarity, Wyatt began to pack, the decision crystallizing with each item thrown into his suitcase. By morning, he would be gone, leaving behind the wreckage of his former life, his legal troubles, and the 2 children who would grow up knowing their father had chosen escape over responsibility. The Austin Bergstrom International Airport was crowded with early morning travelers when Wyatt arrived, passport and one-way ticket to Belize in hand. He had chosen the small Central American country for its lax extradition policies and affordable lifestyle, a place where his remaining funds might sustain him until he established a new identity. At the check-in counter, the airline representative processed his information with routine efficiency. "Window or aisle, Mr. Holloway?" "Window," he replied, glancing nervously around the terminal. His court-ordered monitoring ankle bracelet had been removed the previous day after his attorney had successfully argued for less restrictive pre-trial conditions, a stroke of luck that made his escape possible. As he moved toward security, a hand fell heavily on his shoulder. Turning, Wyatt found himself face-to-face with 2 grim-faced FBI agents. "Wyatt Holloway," the female agent stated formally, "you're under arrest for attempted flight to avoid prosecution." The second agent produced handcuffs while the first continued, "Your attorney called us last night, concerned about statements you made suggesting you might flee. The ticket confirmation emailed to your account triggered an alert in our system." David had betrayed him. His own lawyer had reported him to the FBI, a final blow to Wyatt's increasingly desperate plans. As they led him through the terminal in handcuffs, past staring travelers and airport staff, the reality of his situation finally, fully settled over Wyatt Holloway. There would be no escape, no fresh start, no avoiding the consequences of his actions. The time for running from his responsibilities, from the truth, from justice was over. The federal courthouse in Austin was imposing, a towering structure of granite and glass, designed to inspire respect for the law and perhaps a healthy dose of intimidation. Vivian had visited many magnificent buildings in her academic career, but none had affected her quite like this one. Knowing what waited inside, beside her, Thea offered quiet support. The nurse had become an unexpected ally in the months since Audrey's birth, her compassion extending far beyond professional courtesy into genuine friendship. "You don't have to do this," Thea reminded her gently. "Your written statement would be sufficient." "No," Vivian replied, adjusting Audrey in her carrier. "I need to look him in the eye when I testify, for my own closure." Inside the courtroom, Prosecutor Morales briefed Vivian on the proceedings. The fraud case against Wyatt had been strengthened by his attempted flight, which prosecutors positioned as evidence of consciousness of guilt. His defense had crumbled as former clients came forward with details of the kickback arrangements. Financial records revealed the extent of his deception, and colleagues testified to suspicious patterns they had observed but never reported. "Your testimony about his spending habits during your marriage will establish the timeline of when his legitimate income no longer matched his lifestyle," Morales explained. "It's an important piece of the overall picture." When Wyatt was led into the courtroom in handcuffs, Vivian's breath caught. 3 months of separation had changed him, his confident posture replaced by a defeated slump, his once immaculate appearance now unkempt. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, unable to maintain contact. From the witness stand, Vivian spoke clearly and directly, detailing the expensive trips, luxury purchases, and inexplicable cash reserves that had appeared in their life over the previous 3 years. She described how Wyatt always seemed to have extra money, despite their joint accounts showing no unusual deposits. "Did you ever question the source of these funds?" Morales asked. "He said they were bonuses, cash incentives for meeting sales targets," Vivian replied. "I had no reason to doubt him." "And the diamond ring purchased for Celine Archer, when was that acquired?" 3 days before our daughter was born," Vivian answered, her voice steady despite the pain the memory still evoked. "While I was in the hospital with complications from my pregnancy." Wyatt stared at the table before him, unable to lift his eyes as Vivian methodically deconstructed the financial facade of their marriage. When Thea took the stand next, describing the scene she had witnessed at Indigo Coffee, Wyatt presenting Celine with a diamond ring while Vivian was in labor, a murmur ran through the courtroom. "And you later discovered that this ring was purchased with funds Mr. Holloway had obtained through fraudulent activities at the dealership," Morales clarified. "Yes," Thea confirmed. "The receipt was in his jacket pocket when I helped Mrs. Holloway prepare for her C-section. It showed the ring was purchased with cash, $12,500. The most devastating testimony came from Celine herself, appearing via video link from Houston, where she remained close to her son in the NICU. She detailed the apartment Wyatt had rented for their meetings, the expensive weekends away, the gifts and dinners, all funded, as financial records now proved, by his fraudulent schemes. "Did Mr. Holloway ever express concern about his financial activities at the dealership?" Morales asked her. "Never," Celine replied. "He portrayed himself as highly successful, ethical in his business dealings. I had no idea he was obtaining money illegally until the investigation became public." By the time the prosecution rested its case, Wyatt's fate seemed sealed. His defense attorney made valiant but ultimately ineffective arguments about industry practices and client consent, attempts to mitigate what had become an overwhelming body of evidence. When the judge offered Wyatt the opportunity to make a statement before sentencing, he rose slowly, his voice barely audible at first. "I have no excuse for my actions," he began. "I created a house of cards, professionally, personally, financially, and convinced myself it wouldn't collapse as long as I kept adding more cards. I betrayed everyone who trusted me, my clients, my employer, my wife, even Celine." He looked directly at Vivian for the first time. "I'm sorry. It's inadequate, but it's all I have to offer now." After he sat down, the judge asked if any victims wished to address the court before sentencing. To everyone's surprise, Vivian stood. "Your Honor, I'm not here to ask for leniency or additional punishment. I'm here to reclaim my voice after it was silenced by deception." She turned slightly to face Wyatt directly. "For years, I believed in a marriage that was fundamentally false. I trusted a man who was living a double life, personally and professionally. The greatest victim of these lies isn't me or Celine, or even the financial institutions. It's the 2 innocent children who will grow up with a father in prison, children who did nothing to deserve the chaos created by his choices." She paused, gathering herself before continuing. "I want the court to know that despite everything, I will ensure our daughter knows who her father is, not the manipulator or the fraud, but the man who might have been if he had chosen honesty over deception, responsibility over self-interest. That is the only mercy I can offer. Not forgiveness, but the promise that his children will know there was more to him than his worst decisions. The courtroom fell silent as Vivian returned to her seat. Wyatt's shoulders shook with silent sobs, the first genuine emotion he had displayed throughout the proceedings. When the judge delivered his sentence, 12 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 8, it seemed almost anticlimactic. The true judgment had already been rendered in the destruction of 2 families, the premature birth of a struggling infant, and the irreparable breach of trust that would echo through 2 children's lives for years to come. As Wyatt was led away by federal marshals, he cast one last glance at Vivian, who stood holding Audrey, a final glimpse of the family he had destroyed through his own deceptions. Their eyes met across the courtroom, a moment of silent acknowledgement passing between them, recognition that while legal justice had been served, the deeper consequences of his actions would continue to unfold in the lives of all those connected to him. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements, cameras flashing in the bright Texas sunlight. Vivian moved through them with quiet dignity, declining to comment as Thea helped shield Audrey from the commotion. In her car, away from the media frenzy, Vivian finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, tears streaming down her face as she cradled her daughter close. "It's over," Thea said gently. "You can start rebuilding now." Vivian looked down at Audrey, peaceful in her arms, blissfully unaware of the drama surrounding her young life. "Not over," she corrected softly. "Just beginning, for both of us." As they drove away from the courthouse, leaving behind the formal conclusion of Wyatt Holloway's fraudulent life, Vivian faced forward, toward an uncertain future that would be navigated without maps or guarantees, but with an unwavering commitment to truth that had become her North Star in the aftermath of betrayal. The first letter from Bastrop Federal Correctional Institution arrived 6 months after Wyatt began serving his sentence. Vivian recognized his handwriting on the envelope, once as familiar as her own, now strange and unsettling in its appearance on prison stationery. She placed it unopened in a cedar box, where she kept important documents related to Audrey's father, a collection her daughter might someday want to explore. By then, Vivian had established a new life in Dallas. She'd accepted a visiting professor position at Southern Methodist University, teaching literature, while working on a book about ethical frameworks in contemporary fiction, a topic that had taken on personal significance in the wake of her experience. Her parents had converted their guest house into a comfortable home for her and Audrey, providing both independence and support as she navigated single motherhood. On a crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves skittered across the university quadrangle, Vivian spotted a familiar figure waiting outside her office, Thea McKinnon, holding a squirming 9-month-old Audrey. "Surprise visit," Thea announced with a smile. "We were in the neighborhood." Vivian embraced them both, delighted by the unexpected appearance of her friend. Since the trial, Thea had moved to Dallas permanently, taking a position at a local hospital and continuing her role as a supportive presence in Vivian's life. "Perfect timing," Vivian said, unlocking her office door. "My afternoon class was cancelled." As Audrey explored the office on newly mobile legs, Thea hesitated before producing an envelope from her bag. "I have something for you, from Selene." Vivian accepted it cautiously. Her relationship with Selene remained complicated, 2 women connected by painful circumstance rather than choice. Inside was a photograph of a small, solemn-faced boy with Wyatt's blue eyes, sitting in a hospital bed surrounded by monitoring equipment. A note accompanied the image. "Carter was released from the NICU last month. His lungs are still developing, but doctors are optimistic. I thought you might want this for Audrey someday, when she's ready to know about her brother." Selene Vivian studied the photo, her emotions a complex mixture of compassion for this innocent child and lingering pain at the circumstances of his conception. "She's moved back to Austin," Thea mentioned. "The marketing job in Houston didn't work out, and Carter needs specialized care that's available at the children's hospital there." "Is she managing financially?" Vivian found herself asking. "Barely. She rejected the settlement from Elite Motors because it came with a non-disclosure agreement. She's freelancing while caring for Carter full-time." Thea hesitated before adding, "She asked about you, about Audrey." Vivian picked up her daughter, who had crawled back to her with a determined expression. "What did you tell her?" "That you're both thriving, that Audrey is healthy and growing beautifully." Thea watched Vivian carefully, She mentioned she's scheduled to take Carter for his first prison visit next month. Wyatt hasn't seen his son yet. The information settled uncomfortably. Vivian had been wrestling with the question of when or if to allow Wyatt access to Audrey. Her attorney had advised that despite his incarceration, Wyatt retained certain parental rights unless formally terminated. "I haven't responded to his letters," Vivian admitted. "I'm not sure I can face him yet, even in a supervised setting." "You don't have to decide now," Thea assured her. "Or ever, really. But for what it's worth, I think Celine is trying to ensure Carter knows his father, flawed as he is." Later that evening, after Audrey was asleep, Vivian finally opened Wyatt's letter. His words were surprisingly humble, lacking the charm and manipulation that had characterized their marriage. "Vivian, I don't expect forgiveness or even understanding. I merely want to acknowledge the irreparable harm I've caused you and our daughter. Prison offers ample time for reflection, and I've been forced to confront the man I became, the lies I told, the people I hurt, the trust I destroyed." Celine visits occasionally with photos of Carter. He was so small at birth the doctors weren't sure he would survive. Seeing him in the NICU through a visitor's window, unable to touch or hold him because of my incarceration, was perhaps the most fitting punishment for my actions. Witnessing the consequences of my choices without being able to offer comfort or support. I won't ask about Audrey. I've forfeited that right. But if you ever feel she might benefit from knowing her father, even this deeply flawed version, I am here. With profound regret, Wyatt. The letter left Vivian unexpectedly emotional. There was nothing to forgive. The breach had been too profound, the betrayal too complete for conventional forgiveness. Yet there was something almost healing in seeing Wyatt stripped of pretense, finally confronting the reality of what he had done. She placed the letter back in its envelope, adding it to the cedar box. Someday Audrey would have questions about her father. When that day came, Vivian would offer the unvarnished truth, including his eventual acknowledgement of responsibility. It was the only gift she could salvage from the wreckage of their marriage. The first meeting between Vivian and Celine after the trial took place at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in North Austin, midway between Vivian's Dallas home and Celine's apartment. Thea had arranged it during one of her hospital shifts in Austin, creating a buffer between the two women whose lives had been irrevocably entangled by the same man. Celine arrived first, Carter secured in an elaborate carrier that accommodated his monitoring equipment. At 14 months, he remained smaller than average, his breathing sometimes labored, but his alert eyes took in everything with remarkable intensity. Vivian entered with Audrey in tow, the toddler now walking confidently, her dark curls bouncing with each determined step. The sight of the two children, half-siblings with their father's unmistakable blue eyes, created an immediate gravity that transcended the tension between their mothers. "Thank you for coming," Celine said, rising awkwardly as Vivian approached. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't either," Vivian admitted, settling Audrey into a high chair. "But Thea can be persuasive." A server took their orders, coffee for the adults, juice for the children, while they navigated the initial discomfort of their situation. "Carter looks better than in the photos," Vivian observed, breaking the silence. "His color has improved." "The new treatment protocol is working," Celine confirmed. "His lungs are developing, just slowly. The doctors are optimistic he'll eventually catch up to his peers." Audrey, noticing the small boy across the table, offered a cheerful hi that startled both women. Carter regarded her solemnly before raising a tiny hand in response. "They look like him," Celine said softly. "Both of them." The observation might have been painful months earlier, but now Vivian merely nodded. "Audrey has his chin and eyes. Your son has his forehead, that same serious expression. Have you taken her to see him?" Celine asked carefully. "Not yet. I'm still processing everything." Vivian stirred her coffee. "Have you told Carter who his father is?" "He's too young to understand, but I show him pictures. When he's older, I'll explain in age-appropriate ways." Celine adjusted Carter's oxygen tube with practiced movements. "I won't lie to him, but I won't vilify Wyatt either. Carter deserves to form his own opinions when he's old enough." The approach resonated with Vivian's own thinking about how to eventually explain Wyatt to Audrey. It was the first of many surprising alignments they would discover during that initial conversation. Similar values regarding honesty with their children, similar concerns about the future, similar determination to create stability, despite challenging circumstances. By the time they had finished their drinks, a tentative framework had emerged. Not friendship exactly, but a pragmatic alliance focused on their children's well-being. They should know each other, Vivian concluded, watching as Audrey shared a teething biscuit with Carter. Whatever happened between us, or with Wyatt, they're siblings. Agreed, Celine said. Maybe quarterly visits to start, alternating between Austin and Dallas. As they finalized these plans, Thea arrived, having completed her shift. She observed the scene with quiet satisfaction, the two children interacting while their mothers established cautious but civil communication. "How did it go?" she asked, joining them. "Better than expected," Vivian admitted. "We've agreed on a visitation schedule for the kids." Thea smiled. "I had a feeling you'd find common ground." Later, as they prepared to leave, Selene hesitated before asking the question that had clearly been on her mind. "The restitution payments from Wyatt's assets. Have you received yours?" "Yes," Vivian confirmed. "The court awarded me the house in Austin, which I sold, plus half of our legitimate savings. It's enough to maintain stability for Audrey and me." "I declined any financial support," Selene said, her voice tight. It felt tainted. The admission revealed a moral line Selene had drawn for herself, refusing to benefit from Wyatt's fraud, despite the financial difficulties she faced as a single mother with a medically fragile child. "That must be challenging," Vivian observed, reassessing the woman before her. "We manage." Celine's pride was evident. "I've started a consultancy, working from home while caring for Carter. It's not ideal, but it's honest work." As they parted ways in the parking lot, Audrey spontaneously reached for Carter's hand, a gesture of innocent connection that brought unexpected tears to both mothers' eyes. In that moment, Vivian recognized a truth she had been resisting. These children would always share a bond, regardless of the circumstances that brought them into the world. For their sakes, she and Selene would need to find a way forward that acknowledged this reality, while allowing both families to heal. Elite Motors had not survived the scandal intact. The once prestigious dealership had been sold to a national chain, rebranded and staffed with entirely new personnel. The shadow of Wyatt's fraud had tainted the original ownership, even though Jacob Reinhardt had been cleared of direct involvement. On a business trip to Austin 18 months after the trial, Vivian drove past the former showroom, now displaying a different luxury car brand under new management. The building looked the same, but the sign had changed, erasing the visible evidence of the place where Wyatt had constructed his elaborate deceptions. She continued to the university campus, where she had once taught, meeting with former colleagues about a potential return to her academic position. The department chair welcomed her warmly, expressing admiration for both her recent scholarly work and her resilience during the public ordeal. "We'd be honored to have you back, Vivian," he said. "Your perspective on ethical frameworks in literature has only been enriched by your experiences." The offer was tempting. A return to familiar surroundings, colleagues who respected her, work she loved. Yet as she walked the campus, Vivian realized that Austin held too many complicated memories. Her life had been fundamentally altered here, her trust shattered, her future redirected without her consent. Dallas, initially a temporary refuge, had become something else, a place of reconstruction where she had begun building something new rather than trying to salvage what remained of her previous life. That evening she met Thea for dinner at a restaurant they had once visited during Vivian's pregnancy, a final reclaiming of a space associated with her past. "I'm not taking the position," she announced as they settled at their table. "I'm staying in Dallas." Thea nodded, unsurprised. "You've established roots there. Audrey has stability." "It's more than that," Vivian admitted. "Austin represents who I was before, the woman who believed in her marriage, who trusted without question, who defined herself primarily as Wyatt's wife, and then Audrey's mother. And Dallas represents possibility, the woman I'm becoming, on my terms, making deliberate choices rather than responding to catastrophe." Vivian smiled slightly. "I've accepted a book contract. The university has offered me tenure track. I'm looking at houses in the neighborhood." "You're rebuilding," Thea observed. "Completely. Not patching over what was damaged, but creating something entirely new from the foundation up." Vivian reached for her friend's hand. "Thank you for helping me get here. Your intervention that day in the hospital, it was painful but necessary." "I've thought about that decision many times," Thea admitted. "Whether I overstepped professional boundaries, whether there might have been a less traumatic way to bring the truth to light. There wasn't, Vivian assured her. Some truths are inherently traumatic. The kindness comes not in hiding them, but in supporting people through the aftermath. Their conversation continued, touching on lighter topics. Audrey's developing vocabulary, Thea's recent promotion, plans for the upcoming holidays. As they prepared to leave, Vivian noticed a familiar face entering the restaurant. Jacob Reinhardt, Wyatt's former boss, accompanied by a woman she presumed was his wife. Jacob spotted her immediately, his expression registering surprise and then concern. After a brief word to his companion, he approached Vivian's table. "Mrs. Holloway," he began awkwardly. "I wasn't sure you'd still be in Austin." "Just visiting," she replied, her tone neutral. "And it's Professor Matthews now. I've returned to my maiden name." He nodded, understanding. "Of course, I've wanted to reach out, to express how deeply sorry I am for what happened under my watch. Wyatt's actions weren't just professionally reprehensible, they were a personal betrayal to everyone who trusted him, especially you." The apology seemed sincere, if belated. Vivian acknowledged it with a slight nod. "How has the industry responded to the case?" "It's been a wake-up call. New compliance protocols, better oversight of financing arrangements." Jacob shifted uncomfortably. "The new ownership is very transparent. They've implemented safeguards that would have prevented Wyatt's scheme. Small comfort to those who were defrauded," Thea observed quietly. Jacob accepted the rebuke with a grimace. "Yes. The restitution process continues, though it can never fully repair the damage." He hesitated before adding, "I've visited him, you know, in prison." This surprised Vivian. "Why?" "To understand how it happened, how someone I trusted, mentored, could maintain such elaborate deceptions." Jacob's expression was troubled. "He's changed, stripped of the charm, the persuasiveness. There's just a man facing the consequences of his choices." After Jacob rejoined his wife, Thea studied Vivian's face. "Are you okay?" "Better than I expected," Vivian realized. Seeing Jacob didn't trigger the emotional response I anticipated. It's like watching scenes from someone else's life now, recognizable, but no longer immediately painful. The observation marked an important milestone in her healing process, the ability to encounter reminders of her past without being overwhelmed by them. The wound had scarred over, still visible, but no longer raw. The Austin Children's Hospital specialized in pediatric pulmonology, making it the best facility for managing Carter's ongoing respiratory issues. Celine had structured her entire life around her son's medical needs, working remotely, living in an apartment near the hospital, learning to operate the equipment that monitored his breathing during vulnerable periods. On Carter's second birthday, she organized a small celebration in a hospital playroom during one of his regular treatment visits. The guest list was limited: Carter's medical team, a few friends who had supported Celine through her difficult pregnancy and the NICU ordeal, and, somewhat surprisingly, Vivian and Audrey, who had driven from Dallas for the occasion. Thea, who had helped coordinate the visit, watched the interaction between the two families with professional and personal interest. The children, now more aware of each other, displayed the curious familiarity of siblings who didn't share a household but recognized their connection. 3-year-old Audrey was protective of her younger brother, helping him open presents and offering him the first piece of cake. "They look like they've known each other forever," Vivian observed, standing beside Celine as they watched the children. "They have, in a way," Celine replied. "The DNA they share creates a recognition beyond their conscious understanding." The conversation between the two women had evolved over the months of coordinated visits, still careful, still bounded by the unusual circumstances of their connection, but increasingly genuine. Their shared experience as single mothers navigating the aftermath of Wyatt's deceptions had created an unexpected solidarity. "Have you heard from him recently?" Vivian asked, the question no longer carrying its former sting. "He writes to Carter weekly, children's drawings, simple stories." Celine adjusted her son's oxygen tube as he laughed at something Audrey had said. "I read them to him, though I'm not sure how much he understands yet." "Does he ask about Audrey?" "Sometimes. I've been honest that she's Carter's sister, that they have the same father." Celine hesitated before adding, "He mentioned in his last letter that you're still declining prison visits." Vivian nodded. "I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. But..." She watched Audrey gently help Carter blow out his candles. "I've started saving his letters for her. And I've told her about her brother, in simple terms appropriate for her age. The pediatric pulmonologist who oversaw Carter's care approached them, her expression cautiously optimistic. The latest test results are encouraging, she told Celine. His lung capacity has improved significantly. We might be able to reduce his supplemental oxygen requirements soon. The news brought visible relief to Celine's face. For 2 years, she had lived with the constant anxiety of Carter's fragile health, a consequence of his premature birth, which itself had been triggered by the stress of Wyatt's arrest and the subsequent public scandal. "That's wonderful," Vivian said sincerely. The children's well-being had become a shared concern that transcended the complicated history between their mothers. Later, as the party wound down and Carter began showing signs of fatigue, Thea helped transport the gifts to Celine's car, while Vivian supervised the children's goodbyes. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Carter asked Audrey, his speech slightly muffled by the oxygen cannula. "We have to go home," Audrey explained with the authority of an older sibling. "But I'll come back soon. And we can talk on the computer," she added, referring to the video calls that had become part of their routine. Watching them, Celine spoke quietly to Vivian. "I never expected this, that they would have a real relationship, despite everything. They're innocent in all of this," Vivian replied. "Their connection shouldn't be sacrificed because of Wyatt's choices." The sentiment reflected Vivian's evolving perspective on her situation, a determination to separate Wyatt's actions from their ongoing consequences, to mitigate the harm to the children while acknowledging the reality that had created them. As they prepared to leave, Celine handed Vivian a thick envelope. "This came for you, care of my address. I think he's trying a different approach since you haven't responded to his direct communications." The envelope contained legal documents. Wyatt had initiated the process to voluntarily terminate his parental rights to Audrey, contingent upon Vivian's agreement. An attached letter explained his reasoning. "I've come to understand that true fatherhood is more than biological contribution. It requires presence, integrity, commitment, qualities I failed to demonstrate. While I will always consider myself Audrey's father in the most basic sense, I recognize that my actions have forfeited my right to participate in her upbringing. This legal termination would give you complete authority regarding her future, removing any obligation for prison visits or ongoing contact. It's not what I want, but perhaps it's what Audrey needs, freedom from the shadow of my mistakes. The choice is entirely yours. Whatever you decide, I've instructed my attorney to cooperate fully." The document represented a final surrender from the man who had once controlled so much of Vivian's life, an acknowledgement that he no longer had the right to make demands or expect accommodation. "Are you going to accept?" Celine asked, noting Vivian's expression as she reviewed the papers. "I don't know," Vivian admitted. "Part of me wants to sever all ties completely. Another part wonders if that's really in Audrey's best interest long-term." The question hung between them, the same dilemma Celine faced with Carter, balancing the pain of Wyatt's betrayal against the children's need to understand their origins. "Whatever you decide," Celine said carefully, "it won't change the relationship between the children. Carter will always be Audrey's brother, regardless of legal designations." The assurance addressed Vivian's unspoken concern that formalizing Wyatt's removal from Audrey's life might jeopardize the sibling connection she had come to value for her daughter. "I'll think about it," she promised. "It's not a decision to make hastily." As they parted ways in the hospital parking lot, the contrast between their initial hostile connection and current tentative alliance was striking. From unwilling participants in Wyatt's deception to cautious co-architects of their children's shared future, they had forged a path neither could have imagined during the darkest days of their ordeal. The new house in Dallas represented everything Vivian had been working toward since the trial: independence, stability, a fresh start unburdened by painful associations. The modest craftsman bungalow had character and charm, with a backyard perfect for Audrey's growing energy and a study where Vivian could work on her second book. On moving day, Thea arrived with coffee and determination, directing the movers with cheerful efficiency, while Vivian unpacked the most essential items. By afternoon, the major furniture was in place. Audrey's room was functional, and the kitchen was organized enough for basic meals. As they collapsed onto the newly positioned sofa, surveying their progress, Thea raised the question Vivian had been considering since receiving Wyatt's legal documents. "Have you decided about the parental rights termination?" Vivian sighed, watching Audrey arrange stuffed animals in her new bedroom across the hall. I'm leaning toward accepting it, not out of anger or revenge, but because it's cleaner legally. It would give me sole decision-making authority for her future. But, Thea prompted, sensing hesitation, but I keep thinking about Carter, about how central his connection with Wyatt seems to be in Celine's approach to parenting. Vivian struggled to articulate her concern. Am I depriving Audrey of something essential by legally severing that tie? The legal designation doesn't change the biological reality, Thea observed. Audrey will always be Wyatt's daughter, regardless of paperwork. The question is what kind of relationship, if any, serves her best interest. It was the heart of the matter, balancing protection from Wyatt's destructive influence against Audrey's potential future need to understand her origins. I spoke with my therapist about it yesterday, Vivian admitted. She suggested that terminating his rights doesn't preclude the possibility of supervised contact later, if Audrey expresses interest when she's older. It just means the decision would be entirely mine, not subject to court-mandated visitation schedules. The perspective offered a middle path, legal clarity now with flexibility for the future, based on Audrey's needs rather than Wyatt's desires or Vivian's wounded feelings. That sounds like a thoughtful approach, Thea agreed, protecting Audrey's present while keeping options open for her future. The conversation shifted to more immediate concerns, finishing the unpacking, arranging Audrey's preschool enrollment, planning a housewarming gathering. As evening approached, Vivian opened a bottle of wine to celebrate their accomplishment. To new beginnings, she toasted, clinking glasses with Thea. And to the strength you've shown getting here, Thea added. Not everyone recovers from betrayal as profound as what you experienced. Some people remain defined by it forever. I still have moments, Vivian acknowledged. Days when the anger feels fresh, when I can't believe I didn't see the signs earlier. But they're less frequent now, less overwhelming. Outside, the setting sun cast golden light across the backyard, where Audrey was exploring her new swing set. Watching her daughter's joyful discovery, Vivian felt a surge of something that had been missing during the darkest days of her ordeal. Hope, not just for survival, but for genuine happiness. I had a dream last night, she told Thea. I was standing at a crossroads looking back at the path that led there. All the pain, the betrayal, the public humiliation. But instead of feeling trapped by it, I was choosing a new direction, one that led somewhere entirely different. That's your subconscious confirming what you already know, Thea suggested. You're no longer defined by what happened to you. You're defined by what you're creating now. The observation captured exactly what Vivian had been working toward, reclaiming the narrative of her life from the man who had nearly destroyed it. Later that night, after Audrey was asleep in her new bedroom and Thea had departed, Vivian sat at her desk and composed her response to Wyatt's offer. The legal documents required only her signature, but she felt compelled to include a personal note. Wyatt, I'm accepting your voluntary termination of parental rights to Audrey. This isn't done out of vengeance, but out of a genuine belief that it provides the clearest path forward for her and for me. I want you to know that I maintain contact with Celine and Carter. The children are developing a meaningful sibling relationship that I intend to foster, regardless of the legal status of your paternity. Audrey knows, in age-appropriate terms, that Carter is her brother and that you are their biological father. As she grows and her questions become more complex, I will answer them honestly without deliberately demonizing you. I cannot predict whether Audrey will someday want contact with you. If that day comes, it will be her choice, guided by my assessment of her emotional readiness. Until then, I ask that you respect the boundaries this legal termination establishes. I hope your ongoing relationship with Carter provides you with the opportunity for redemption you seem to be seeking. Despite everything, I believe people can change, can learn from even the most catastrophic mistakes. Whether that change comes in time to matter to Audrey remains to be seen. Vivian. After signing both the letter and the legal documents, Vivian sealed them in an envelope addressed to Wyatt's attorney. The action represented not closure. She had come to understand that some wounds never fully close, but forward movement, a deliberate step away from the past and toward the future she was constructing. On her way to bed, she paused in Audrey's doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her new room. The child's face in repose showed traces of both her parents, Wyatt's distinctive features softened by Vivian's genetic contribution. She would always carry that physical connection to her father, regardless of legal designations or physical distance. The realization brought an unexpected sense of peace. No matter what documents were signed or boundaries established, Audrey and Carter remained living connections between the separate worlds their parents now inhabited, innocent bridges across the chasm created by betrayal and consequence. In that moment, Vivian understood that the victory she had achieved was indeed bittersweet. Freedom purchased at tremendous cost, a new life built from the ashes of destruction. Yet it was a victory nonetheless, hard-won and precious in its authenticity. Whatever came next, for her, for Audrey, for the complicated family constellation they had become part of, would be navigated with the wisdom and strength forged in the crucible of Wyatt's deception. As she closed Audrey's door gently, leaving just a crack for the nightlight's glow to filter through, Vivian carried that knowledge with her, not as a burden, but as confirmation that even the heaviest lies, once exposed to truth, could no longer hold power over those they were meant to ensnare. 5 years passed, marked by seasons of growth, healing, and the inexorable forward movement of time. The scandal that had once dominated headlines in Austin had faded from public memory, replaced by newer controversies and fresh outrages. But for those directly touched by Wyatt Holloway's deceptions, the repercussions continued to shape their daily lives in both subtle and profound ways. Bastrop Federal Correctional Institution maintained a rigid schedule that Wyatt had come to find almost comforting in its predictability. 7 years into his 12-year sentence, he had established a quiet routine, working in the prison library, participating in the financial literacy program he now taught to fellow inmates, writing letters that often went unanswered. His cell contained few personal items, but prominently displayed were 2 photographs. A formal portrait of Audrey at age 5, sent by Vivian's parents without commentary, and a more recent image of 7-year-old Carter, standing proudly beside a science fair project about lung development. The children's faces showed increasing resemblance to each other as they grew, their shared genetics becoming more apparent with each passing year. Wyatt's weekly letters to Carter had never ceased, evolving from simple stories and drawings to more substantive correspondence as the boys' reading skills developed. Their monthly visits, facilitated by Celine despite the logistical challenges, had established a cautious father-son relationship, limited by circumstance but meaningful within those constraints. No such connection existed with Audrey. The voluntary termination of parental rights Wyatt had initiated 5 years earlier had been finalized, legally severing his claim to the daughter he had never truly known. Vivian's occasional updates came through formal channels, brief notes accompanying school photos, factual information about Audrey's development, devoid of emotional content but consistent in their delivery. It was more than he deserved, as Wyatt acknowledged during his bi-weekly sessions with the prison psychologist. The man who had once believed himself entitled to everything he desired, career success, family stability, passionate affair, now found humility in accepting the limited connection his children's mothers permitted. "I've been thinking about what happens after release," he told Dr. Kemper during their appointment. "I'll be eligible for parole in another year." The psychologist nodded. "And what are your thoughts about that transition?" "I won't return to Austin," Wyatt said decisively. "Too many people I've hurt. Too much damage associated with my name there. I've been corresponding with a cousin in Seattle about potential employment in his construction business. Manual labor, starting at the bottom. That represents a significant shift from your previous career path." "Everything about my life now represents a shift from what came before," Wyatt observed with hard-earned self-awareness. The man who committed those crimes, who betrayed his wife, who thought he could maintain 2 separate lives without consequence, he doesn't exist anymore. Or rather, he exists only as a cautionary tale, a version of myself I've had to acknowledge and understand in order to move beyond. The transformation was genuine, if incomplete, a product of extended solitude, therapeutic intervention, and the humbling reality of incarceration. Whether it would translate to lasting change beyond prison walls remained to be seen, but the foundation had been laid through 7 years of forced accountability. In Dallas, the academic year was drawing to a close as Professor Vivian Matthews guided her graduate seminar through final presentations. At 43, she had established herself as a respected scholar in the field of ethical frameworks in contemporary literature, her second book having received critical acclaim and a prestigious academic award. The elegant silver streaking her dark hair was the only visible sign of the stress she had endured years earlier. Otherwise, she projected confident authority as she moderated student discussions. After class, she gathered her materials and hurried across campus. Audrey's elementary school performance started at 4, and she had promised to arrive early to help with costumes. At 8 years old, her daughter had inherited Vivian's academic aptitude, along with a passion for theatre that seemed entirely her own, a blossoming individual rather than merely a reflection of either parent. As she drove toward the school, Vivian's phone rang through the car's speakers. "Just confirming we're still on for this weekend," came Celine's voice. "Carter's been talking about nothing else for days." "Absolutely," Vivian confirmed. "Audrey has her costume packed for the Renaissance Fair. You'll stay the whole weekend, right? The guest room is all prepared." "That's the plan, as long as Carter's breathing remains stable. His doctor gave us clearance for the trip yesterday." The quarterly visits between the siblings had evolved into longer stays as the children grew older, their connections strengthening despite the complicated circumstances of their relation. What had begun as a pragmatic arrangement between wary co-victims had transformed into a functioning family system that prioritized the children's relationship above lingering adult tensions. "Thea mentioned she might join us at the fair on Saturday," Vivian added. "She's been helping Audrey with her lady-in-waiting costume." The nurse, who had become an unexpected catalyst for truth, had remained a constant presence in their lives, her friendship with Vivian deepening into a bond that transcended its unusual origins. Now a nursing director at Dallas Memorial, Thea maintained connections with both Vivian and Celine, offering support that bridged their separate worlds. After ending the call, Vivian arrived at Brookhaven Elementary just as parents were beginning to gather for the spring performance. She found Audrey in the classroom designated as a dressing room, already half in costume for her role as the caterpillar in the school's production of Alice in Wonderland. "Mom!" Audrey's face lit up. "Ms. Rodriguez said my antenna keeps falling off. Can you fix it?" As Vivian adjusted the headpiece, she studied her daughter's animated expression, the sparkle in eyes that undeniably resembled Wyatt's, yet conveyed a joy and openness entirely Audrey's own. The genetic connection to her father existed as biological fact rather than emotional burden, something Vivian had worked consciously to achieve through years of careful, age-appropriate explanations. "Is Carter coming to see the play?" Audrey asked, as Vivian secured the costume. "He's coming tomorrow, they'll be here for the whole weekend, and we're all going to the Renaissance Fair on Saturday. Can I show him my science project? I got an A." "Of course," Vivian smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. The friendship between the half-siblings had flourished naturally, untainted by the complicated history of their parents. Later, watching Audrey perform on stage, confident, expressive, fully present in her moment of theatrical glory, Vivian felt a familiar wave of gratitude for the life they had built from the wreckage of betrayal. The path had not been easy, particularly in those early years of single motherhood, while simultaneously rebuilding her career and processing her own trauma. Yet the outcome had yielded unexpected gifts, deeper self-knowledge, genuine independence, and a model of resilience she hoped Audrey would carry forward. From 2 rows behind her, Vivian heard a familiar voice whispering to another parent. "That's Vivian Matthews' daughter. You know, the literature professor whose ex-husband went to prison for that big fraud case years ago. She raised that child entirely on her own after the scandal." The conversation didn't sting as it once might have. Her connection to Wyatt's crimes had become a footnote rather than a defining characteristic, occasionally mentioned but no longer central to how others perceived her. The professional reputation she had built, the respected academic she had become, the mother she was to Audrey, these identities had long since overshadowed her past as the betrayed wife of a convicted fraudster. After the performance, as parents and children mingled in the school cafeteria, Vivian's phone lit up with a text from Thea. "Just saw the photos you sent. Audrey looks amazing. Can't wait to see you both tomorrow, bringing Carter's favorite cookies." The message exemplified the unexpected family they had formed, non-traditional, created through conscious choice rather than conventional bonds, yet providing both children with stability and connection that transcended their father's absence. The Renaissance Fair sprawled across 20 acres of parkland outside Dallas, a colorful anachronism of jousting knights, wandering minstrels, and food vendors selling giant turkey legs and mead in souvenir goblets. Carter, dressed as a medieval squire in a costume Celine had spent weeks creating, ran ahead with Audrey toward the children's archery range, their excitement palpable. "Walk, don't run," Celine called after them, her protective instincts heightened by years of managing Carter's health challenges. Though significantly improved, his respiratory issues still required monitoring, particularly during physical activity. "They'll be fine," Thea assured her, having joined the group that morning. "The air quality is excellent today, and he's been stable for months." The three women followed at a more measured pace, an unlikely trio united by circumstance and ultimately by choice. Vivian, now comfortably established in her academic career and personal life. Celine, who had built a successful marketing consultancy while navigating single motherhood and her son's medical needs. Thea, whose compassionate intervention years earlier had set them all on paths they could never have anticipated. "I received a letter from Wyatt yesterday," Celine mentioned as they walked. "He's eligible for parole review next year." Vivian nodded, unsurprised by the information. Though she no longer maintained direct contact with her former husband, she remained aware of his status through occasional updates from the Victim Services Coordinator. "He's mentioned moving to the Northwest after release," Celine continued. "Somewhere he can start fresh, away from the notoriety." "That seems wise," Vivian acknowledged, "for everyone involved." The conversation flowed without the tension that might have existed years earlier, a reflection of the distance they had all traveled from those traumatic days in the hospital and courtroom. Wyatt remained a connection between them, but no longer the defining one. Ahead, Audrey helped Carter position his bow, her natural protectiveness toward her younger brother evident in the careful way she adjusted his stance. Despite their different mothers, different homes, and the complicated circumstances of their birth, the siblings had forged a bond that seemed to exist independent of adult intervention, a genuine connection that brought comfort to both mothers, despite the painful history that had created it. "They're quite a pair," Thea observed, watching the children. "You've both done something remarkable, you know, allowing them to have each other despite everything that happened." "It wasn't always easy," Celine admitted, "especially in the beginning. But it was necessary," Vivian added. "Their connection shouldn't be sacrificed because of choices they had no part in making." As the day progressed, they navigated the fairgrounds, watching a jousting tournament, exploring the artisan marketplace, sampling medieval-inspired cuisine. When Carter showed signs of fatigue, they found a shaded area to rest, the adults settling on a wooden bench while the children sprawled on a picnic blanket, examining the treasures they had collected. "Look what I got you," Audrey said, presenting Carter with a small wooden dragon she had purchased with her allowance. "For your collection." Carter accepted it with solemn appreciation, immediately incorporating it into an imaginative scenario involving his existing toys. The simple exchange reflected the genuine care between them, untainted by the complicated history that had created their connection. Watching them, Vivian reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the devastating discovery of Wyatt's betrayal, through the painful public exposure of his crimes, to this new reality where joy coexisted with the memory of pain. The scars remained, visible in quiet moments of reflection, in occasional dreams that still featured Wyatt, in the reflexive wariness that sometimes emerged when beginning new relationships. Yet those scars had strengthened rather than weakened her. The woman who had once defined herself primarily as Wyatt's wife, whose identity had been so entangled with his that his betrayal had threatened her entire sense of self, had emerged from that crucible with a clearer understanding of her own boundaries, values, and capabilities. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the fairgrounds, the small group gathered their belongings and headed toward the parking area. Audrey and Carter walked ahead, still in costume, their silhouettes against the sunset creating a tableau that captured both the fantasy of the Renaissance fair and the reality of their unusual bond. "Are you coming to Carter's birthday next month?" Celine asked as they reached the cars. "He specifically requested that Aunt Vivian be there." "I wouldn't miss it," Vivian assured her, touched by the title Carter had bestowed upon her, a recognition of her role in his life that transcended the painful history between his parents. After exchanging goodbyes, with plans confirmed for tomorrow's activities, Vivian and Audrey drove toward home through the gathering twilight. In the rearview mirror, her daughter's face reflected contentment mixed with the pleasant exhaustion of a day well spent. "Mom?" Audrey asked suddenly. Are you glad we have Carter and Aunt Celine in our family, even though it's not a regular family? The question contained layers of meaning that Audrey herself might not yet fully comprehend. Vivian considered her response carefully. Yes, I am, she answered honestly. Families come in all different forms. Ours might not look like what you see in some of your friends' homes, but it's built on something very important, truth and caring for each other, even when it's complicated. Audrey nodded, processing this with the thoughtfulness that often surprised Vivian. I like our family even if it's different. So do I, Vivian agreed, reaching back to squeeze her daughter's hand. As they turned onto their street, the porch lights of their home glowed welcomingly in the dusk, a beacon of the stability Vivian had worked so diligently to create. The house represented more than physical shelter. It was tangible evidence of her journey from victim to architect of her own life, from a woman defined by betrayal to one who had transcended it. Later that night, after Audrey was asleep, Vivian sat on her back porch with a glass of wine, contemplating the stars visible in the clear Texas sky. The weight she had carried for so long, of anger, of humiliation, of betrayal, had gradually transformed into something different, a profound understanding of human frailty, including her own, and the complex interplay between choice and consequence that shaped all their lives. Wyatt's deceptions had nearly destroyed her, yet paradoxically had led her to a life of greater authenticity and purpose than she might otherwise have known. This was the bittersweetness of her victory, freedom purchased at tremendous cost, wisdom gained through painful experience, strength forged in the crucible of betrayal. As she gazed upward at the vastness of the night sky, Vivian felt neither triumph nor lingering resentment, but rather a quiet acknowledgement of the journey behind her and the path still unfolding ahead. The truth had indeed set her free, not in the moment of its devastating revelation, but in the years of rebuilding that followed. Each conscious choice, each act of courage, each prioritization of honesty over comfort, contributing to the woman she had become. The weight of lies had been transformed, through time and tenacity, into the substance of a life rebuilt on firmer foundations than before. Not perfect, not unmarked by pain, but authentic and ultimately her own. The legacy she would pass to Audrey, who would grow up understanding that even the heaviest burdens could become the bedrock of something beautiful, if faced with courage and an unwavering commitment to truth. If this story touched your heart and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.